Are we started? Yeah, I think. We're going to do this one right. Start on a cheers with Happy Canada Day. And welcome to Portal Mountain Development Meeting number 85, I believe. And this is the Axiological Conspiracy, Part 4.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully the final part. Happy Canada Day. Happy future Independence Day to any potential American patriots out there.
Right. Our joyous North American celebrations.
I am currently employed by an American-owned company, so I get both holidays off.
Very nice. Yeah. So we are hoping to kind of wrap things up with this, the topic of the axiological conspiracy.
Yeah.
In other words, we want to quickly go over and solidify like what it is, where it came from,
Why is it a conspiracy? What aspect of it makes it conspiratorial?
Right, and it is kind of like a clickbaity type term, you could say.
Yeah,
the axiological conspiracy, even having the word conspiracy in there, right? But
but then putting the mouthful of axiological into it as well. It's like, whoa.
It's supposed to be grand and catch attention. So because we're looking at how did this civilization come to be in the state that it is, where there's just so much kind of suffering and like profit motive is just out of control state, you could say, or like selfish.
No, when you say suffering, like what do you mean? Because that's another like one of those words that's like, if you hear it and you know what we're talking about, it's like, well, yeah. But if you don't know what we're talking about, it's like, what the
amount,
fuck off.
The sheer volume, even percentage-wise, of the planet Earth, of people on the planet that are getting the shit end of the stick. The sheer volume of it.
Okay. So one such measure is just the grand total of the percentage of people that are not exactly
like
living.
it's a nightmare out there.
Right.
Like if you go to most other countries, it's a freaking nightmare.
Their daily life is basically a hustle. And
try not to get killed and
yeah,
paying off the local gangs and mobs and all this shit.
Yeah.
Like
and
everywhere.
A fatal hustle.
If you're a female, obviously,
that's even worse.
Forced to prostituting and all that.
I think you might want to use the word woman.
I'll stick with female.
No, the thing is that female can be anything. Women are the only part of the female group that we are interested in this particular situation.
Well, in any case, whether it's sex trade or like hard labor, right? It's one or the other, man or woman, is different, two vastly different streams or paths.
I'll clarify, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to breathe a little bit of humanity into this discussion, if it's going to be mentioned. We're not talking about cattle. We're not talking about breeding dogs. We're not talking about chickens.
Okay.
Just saying.
So there's some later on nuance, but general picture would be, you can tell at birth what type of how fucked this person is, in which way.
Right. Okay. Sure.
That's all I mean. One is going to tend to grow more muscle. The other is, etc. Be able to bear children, and
this is why I use the word proximity, because proximity could mean it's on you or it's beside you. Right. So when I say muscle mass proximity, it's the. So we're talking. This is where I'm going a little less humane, and not less humane, less humanizing, and just breaking it down into its components. Muscle mass equated to basically the capacity for work, or the extraction of said work, for whatever reason.
Right, and work typically being a physical rather than mental.
Yeah, and proximity simply means
in cases like diamond mines, lithium mines, gold mines,
So in some sense, women would be like more proximal to muscle mass, in the sense of like you know, basic biology kind of stuff. On average, individuals vary, of course, but it also speaks to the fact that, you know, like your barons, your bosses, or whatever, are also placing themselves in that position of being weak themselves and extracting the muscle mass from other people. So there isn't w- a jab at women or anything there. In fact, it's more of a jab at the rich, so to speak, because they become like, well, in the case of, say, Elon Musk, they become potato-like.
I suppose. I don't know. I feel like a little
It's
bit of a derailment here. Like,
Yeah,
what do
yeah. No,
what do I call suffering? Well, how shit end of the stick most of the world is. Just look at it.
if you have muscle, basically,
And why
it's
is
being
it the way
used.
that it is? Who cares? Many people don't have, through their media, don't gain access or insights into just how shitty many people have it. Most on the world, in the planet, right?
Yeah, well, I already agreed with you on the fact that if we're using that as like our litmus stick,
So
then it
there's
makes
some
sense.
kind of systemic thing, some kind of structure.
Failure.
What is the structure that keeps this dynamic in play, right? And people will sometimes like become conscious or like feel guilty that
So-
they have such a good life in a, you know, the first world or whatever, and it's on the backs of like
it's this dynamic.
third world.
It's this dynamic that deserves the title of conspiracy. Actually, like that question you just asked. If I were to like place that as a term anywhere, it would be to cover that, to cover that question. It's like, what is that failure specifically, and how is it progressing? Right, and that specific failure is always going to be tied into that charlatanism I was talking about earlier, which tries to transform model into systemic value extraction. So that's the conspiracy of it.
So that do you find that a useful kind of introduction, I guess, to how most people could, at least in our culture, or whatever, living in us in Canada, North America, how we encounter or experience the inequality of outcomes around the world, and like how it's set up, and realizing that, or understanding, or however through the market our world is benefiting while others are going down.
Yeah, we get a filtered view of it.
Or being crushed in order to benefit, right?
Right. But the view is filtered in a number of ways. First of all, we are removed from the creation of products by monetary exchange. Right? So like you don't get to see
in
the
general
child labor.
we call it obfuscation, but yeah.
So you don't see the child labor that goes into whatever your iWatch or whatever the fuck you have. And on the flip side, you're not fed any of the information about those processes either.
And the market is so abstracted, and it's obfuscated at every trade that the value is laundered through money, like the inherent contextual value of whatever that commodity is. So the ability for goods and services to have actual meaning is destroyed at every step of the way.
Right. So like you wouldn't know how many people have died for
Through
whatever
every
product.
trade. Every single trade is just money. It's getting laundered. That's what the goods are laundered through the monetary system. Laundering is a good word, I think.
Well, money,
people understand it as sort of obfuscating or hiding away the true sources of something, right? At every transaction, it gets laundered, and that's like the grease that allows this competition to be as it is. Because we would be overrun with guilt and remorse if we understood what we're actually demanding with our money that the market do.
To paraphrase Darren Allen, he posits that currency is essentially the laundering mechanism of mass theft. This is how you remove things away from people in exchange for
Right.
the currency and justify it
Hmm.
through law. So, in essence, money is look, the whole idea of currency is one ginormous mechanism for laundering everything.
Right. I have a feeling we talked pretty in depth about that probably year or more ago.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. So that's the system. You can look at the world around you and say like, wow, I don't know how the banking system works, or I don't understand how all these corporations are interconnected, or who owns. It seems like ownership is concentrated and all this kind of stuff, centralized somehow.
And even if you do
ambiguously.
know anything, you know only a small, tiny little pocket, because beyond that pocket, everything is again obfuscated to
Right.
shit.
Yeah, yeah. By design, it's the value is kind of unburdened from its
relegated
context.
it's relegated to an abstraction.
Right, so you can do anything with it.
Right, and here's where the word laundering really comes into play. What's laundered is meaning. If everything is reduced to numbers and what do you call them? Accounts in the balance sheet, then it doesn't really matter which symbolic words appear in each place, so long as the values match. Right, and this is how you can obfuscate everything into anything, and reduce anything meaningful into everything meaningless. And by meaningless, I mean pure process without a regard for what that process is doing or why it's doing it.
As long as everything can be
context.
locked into what do you call it, like a three-way transaction. We call that when you can like set up a system where okay, we exchange this and that. Once these two things happen, it's like taken up. There's like a confirmation and it's locked in, right? So the change is taken on multiple locations to replicate the value.
So, what's interesting in accounting is that the reason that you will take a value out of one account and for
double
another
booking accounting, or what's it called?
Yeah.
Something you know what I'm talking about.
Double
entry.
Double entry booking. The reason that you can have a booking and enter the values into both columns is caused by what's called a contract. So behind every one of those exchanges, there's a contract. Now, what that means is that the reason behind it can be basically anything. Arbitrary obfuscation. Do you know what I mean? So there isn't a solid path from demand to supply, but there is this like weird contract-laden path in the mythology that says these transactions are happening. Do you see what I'm saying?
I kind of had to take care of some housekeeping here. You want to repeat that?
So, demand followed by supply is the natural order, right?
Right.
As
the baby cries, so here comes the milk.
But in the accounting world, the only reason the numbers shift between two accounts, like why you'd subtract from one and add to the other. Are you listening?
Yep. Why would you do that?
Is because there's a contract arbitrating said transaction. So instead of following a demand line of narrative, there is a narrative created through contracts overlaying everything that's happening in the accounts. Essentially, that's what's obfuscating everything else.
As long as this service is provided, this account is to be increased.
Increased and this account decreased. That's the double entry.
And the account
part.
decreased, right?
So you take from your debts to your credits.
Right.
So my point being there is that those contracts could be literally any narrative. Any abstraction flows through them, which means ultimately that there is no specific mythology that it connects to except for one that transfers said values. It literally states nothing meaningful at all.
So I'm
And
imagining.
if it does, it's incidental.
So we're talking about the reversal here with supply and demand, where it's like the contract is sitting there. There's a 6-pack of toilet paper on the shelf. The contract is like that. This arbitrarily it exists there. If you want it, then you can make that
Right.
account change. So it's there for no reason.
Yeah.
Until somebody comes by and they're like, "Ooh."
We've created this bunch of garbage for you to throw out.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Be right back.
It makes the store seem like an alien landscape.
Like really, have you ever walked through a forest and seen shelves and shelves and shelves? Of
No,
stuff? Or
there's
is
no
it
shelves.
Cut through one tree with one fruit, collect that, great. Find another tree elsewhere, or an animal, or something else.
Right.
Like you're on the move, always on the move. There's nothing stationary
It's virtual shelves.
that you gotta look for. They shift around.
We've fallen so far. Just kidding, of course. And we're going to take a short break. And we is back.
So yeah,
What were we talking about again?
how contracts make it arbitrary, make an
Right.
arbitrary mythology, and where the idea of obfuscation is really taking root.
Right. And we're trying to show the difference there between what we call the gift economy, or you
Specifically,
could
yeah.
almost call like the natural economy, with the market economy, and distinct difference between the two. And this is where we would have to look into the market, into the ego structure, into the tether and all this kind of stuff to understand what the conspiracy is, quote unquote, the axiological conspiracy.
Yeah. Which involves like taking what nature's given,
Right.
so to speak.
It helps to
and
contrast.
reframe it in a different way, which is what we end up calling a conspiracy to begin with. That's the underlying principle under which we take the sort of freedom to call it that, right? Because it's taking something that exists, so to speak, and turning it in a different direction entirely, pretending that you didn't. Hence,
Right.
that kind of label.
So we're not proposing something. Oh, capitalism is the best we've had so far. Like we're not proposing. But wait, there's something even better that you guys have never heard of. It's gonna blow your mind.
Well,
We're not
definitely
going that way.
you've heard of it, or else you wouldn't be alive.
We don't use natural.
It's another trigger word though.
It's very trigger.
A lot of right wing type stuff.
Guess how trigger gift is.
Appeal to nature. The one thing we have going for us, gift is not something that the right is very much fond of. So at least we've got that going.
Yeah, don't. No, we don't want to use natural.
Yeah, no,
Sorry, I forgot about
the appeal. The appeal to nature is very strong in the right circles.
Obviously, with our discussions recently, conservatism, just as a general force, but the right taking it into.
But their view of nature is contradictory. That's the problem.
Extremes.
Like they're talking about a situation that never existed as if it was a historical fact.
Perfect ideal. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
right.
It's a very problematic in that sense. We do have nature appearing in something called natural concerns, and it's a very down to earth, so to speak, situation.
The usage is something very personal.
Yeah.
Like, what am I concerned with?
So we're talking about shelter, sustenance, maintenance, and
fitness.
No.
Wait.
That's
maintenance and society, community.
Yeah. Community. So like the holonic package, if you will.
Right. Those are the natural concerns.
Natural concerns, and you're talking about the natural hierarchy. So that's environment, organism, maintenance, environment, organism, maintenance. No, my neurochemical operating systems. Social operating system.
Right.
That's that one.
But no, where's fitness in there?
Those are your.
There's another. We're playing the triad game right now.
Those are your focus. So
here is a focus.
So that's your hygiene, nutrition, rest, fitness. Mm-hmm. So that's what you're talking about. The fact that I can recall all of this and still know exactly what it means says a lot, because I haven't thought about this in years. Mm-hmm. It's still the same.
Yep.
In my head, so there's some consistency at least.
For sure.
Not that I've noticed that there's been any.
Model is vast and wide.
Now all of this is
many
relevant.
Frontiers.
All of this is relevant in its own ways in terms of like how to apply solutions. For example, focus is on the personal level, the guild dynamics on the social level, for example. And then you have the natural concerns are more like about the big picture of how the narrative has gone to where it is, right? Because the natural concerns also a delineation of how the plateaus are formed, the ages that are involved in the progression of civilization as it goes through them, as each natural concern is being commodified.
Plateaus of commodification.
Right. So that's correlated, because once a natural concern is commodified, it becomes the plateau.
Yep. Holonic modeling is very powerful. You can kind of just vaguely describe a facet or an aspect of something floating, and you don't have to like fill in all the blanks, because that's what other aspects are for, right? So it's like kind of an easy way to think about stuff in a flowing way that doesn't constrict things unnecessarily.
It's also a cool way to understand how the memeplex is organized. So I don't know if you recall, on the technical side, the memeplex is organized around a central meme, with every little meme filling in the gaps between a meaning, creating the entire complex.
And that depends on your focus at the time.
Right. Moment by moment by moment,
right.
The central meme is what's switching.
Mm-hmm.
So you have that central meme is what you're basing your
gives everything context.
It's what you're basing your proximity complex off of. The central meme is the me in the I am in this, I am not in this, I am that, I am not in that. So
Right.
So it's all interconnected in terms of explanation.
Yeah, so needless to say, we've already been at it a few years.
Yeah.
Is it going to be a few years?
Welcome to the deep end.
Damn. But yeah, we're just trying right now to define the axiological conspiracy, like to try and wrap things up, because we've been just hammering at it for like a few episodes now.
Right. And the central points there is justice, value, axiology,
right. Yeah.
pleasure and pain, and that story.
Right. Justice, a big one, as far as like the lever, like the law, you could say. Justice is law.
It's the central meme of the memeplex, if you will, in this case, in this moment that we're trying to encompass through time.
So justice with a capital J becomes
Justice in
quotations when
Lowercase j.
it's justice defined by law. Could you see
Right.
that?
Right. And for clarity, if you think back to like what I was just saying about accounting, this falls into the same principles, right? So like, this is valuable, good. This is not valuable, bad. Pay, or get paid, or pay, depending on the context. What is it arbitrated by? Some contract, some written law.
Right.
Written
Yeah.
Contracts are
So
like
here's kind of the
law counterpart.
freaky dystopian idea about AI is that you can easily have AI arbitrate how a judge does in the most petty and small things. You can activate an AI judge and have it make a decision, and based on the law, like, yeah, it's gonna execute how it does, and that's it. Boom.
They've done
No
that.
human.
They've done that. I
required.
believe there's stories coming out of like some parts of Eastern Europe where that shit's been implemented. And
Right.
it's not going. It's going basically as you can
would
imagine.
expect, yeah. No human touch, in other words. So supposedly, like, but judges are like tied. They have their hands tied to some extent by the law, by precedent, unless they can like create a new precedent, and the law
And they also
is
are human, and
is
they
a
have
changing
empathy.
and developing law.
But a judge can also feel what another human being is going through. Even the worst of the judges is still
Like,
able
judges
to
have-
relate to experience somehow.
Judges have the power, I think, to create new decisions, which future law or future decisions to be based on. Right?
That's becoming more questionable.
Whether that decision gets upheld in an appeal court and all that, maybe it does,
So-
maybe it does, and then it's kind of like becomes case law.
Here's a segue, small one, hopefully. Roe versus Wade, that situation is more important than just the whole abortion conversation, which merits its own discussion, I guess.
Okay, you've
in some sense.
hit a red hot topic for many
But not for
people.
the same reason that people would think immediately.
Why do you bring it up? I don't get the context.
Because what you're talking
You're just
about,
giving an example.
what you're talking about is the stance of precedent in law. So a
Yeah.
law given before sets precedent for the law given afterward.
Yeah.
But the situation with Roe versus Wade changed that. It made precedent a lot weaker than what it used to be.
You mean when it was introduced?
No, it means like the concept of precedent
What
itself
what
in
happened?
law.
What happened to Roe v. Wade? What's your
The overturn.
overturning? Okay.
So the
Yeah, that's my point. Is it can be overturned, and then whatever was based on that also often gets collapses.
This is unprecedented though. The way it got overturned was through buyouts essentially. Right? There's a three.
I didn't really follow.
There's
I
a
don't-
few
I don't know.
judges that are are on very questionable standings.
Depending on
in
what
t-
political side you.
No,
you
depending
say.
on on record of what their financial transactions were. Strictly based on actual fucking data that's there. So the guy with the yachts.
Have you analyzed the data? Didn't think so.
Have you? Didn't
No.
think so. So there you go. So that's not a leg to stand on. But
Well, okay, there's
the-
no legs to stand on.
So the point being there is more important than any of that is the fact that what precedent used to be is no longer what precedent is anymore. It can be bought, essentially. That's the story
Well,
that's
I think
developing in
the story
in
developing
this,
right now,
in
it
this
seems
situation.
to hopefully, I don't know, hopefully, but
And I'm not the only
that
one saying
the
this.
faith
Like, it's
in
not.
all of these institutions, including media, is dwindling. Like, how
Sure.
can a whole country be like, let's say a couple weeks ago, everyone thinks Biden is totally fine. Those were, they call them cheap fakes. They started
It's
making
just
up a
another
new
s-
term
it's
to
just another
describe what it
cycle.
means when you do a gotcha on Biden.
The whole
And
trust
take
the media,
take
don't
some
trust-
stupid
look,
thing he did out of context and be like, look, he's senile. That's a cheap fake.
Look.
Biden is in his best shape
The
ever
whole-
could be. And then suddenly, what happens? When this event cycle happens, everyone loses faith in what the media was saying or what this institution
Okay.
was doing
So
or
cycle.
what the Supreme Court did.
Cycle.
People lose faith in it,
The
right?
whole point is the cycle. Right now, the cycle repeats itself from the beginning of the first century the beginning of the last century. In terms of
Federal Reserve?
In terms of no, everybody's trusting the media and everybody's siding with things to the extreme. This entire situation is like last century repeating itself. Sure,
Mhm.
there's more fucking tech involved, but
Right.
the entire
Yeah.
thing that
That's another
exploded-
wild thing. Is it's you can see the cycles happening over and over again. It's like nobody learned anything.
So what I'm seeing is like the build up for World War II happening again.
Right.
In my lifetime, and then whatever the fucking explosion is going to be out of that is just going to be as terminal to all of us as it's been, and then it'll get fucking repeated again on restart because everybody's
Right.
going to be like.
So
we
these
need
are
to
the stakes.
restore the
Yeah.
system.
These are the stakes, you could say.
So I have no love for the current situation from either side because
Right.
I see both
I
sides
think
leading to the
that's
same
important.
problem.
Yeah.
And so there's not going to be all points of conversing about politics are going to be moot because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
The machine does what it's going to do, and everybody's going to die.
Yeah.
Pretty much, right? So
Well, the lowest classes. This is the stack,
when you're at the bottom,
when
right,
you're- the
ego
ego stack,
stack
will actually
drops.
Cla-
The ego stack drops. There's a fire at the
we'll
bottom.
clarify. The bottom goes first, then the next, then the next,
Right.
then the next, then the next, and
Until
all
enough.
the way until. So with like say when case of say Hitler's stack, it was at the top, the ego at the top, the Führer, it crashed all the way until his ego disappeared into the fucking fire. But revolution,
His agency.
reform, revolution, and all of that, and war speak about how the stack horizontally splits from each other. So anytime a stack falls, right, there's always a splitting mechanism, like in cells, if you will, that allows clones of it to continue falling.
Right.
Which is what looks like it's being sustained, but essentially it's just accelerating the fucking fall and the garbage chute situation.
Mm-hmm.
So I said a lot of loaded things there, but I think you understand what I'm
Yeah.
demonstrating.
We
with that?
we often kind of in our wordings that we use kind of butt heads a little bit on just like we're both like
Semantics.
seeing triggerings. We're like, oh, that's trigger,
Yeah, but that's semantical. All the triggers we have are all semantics.
right? But at least we understand. Like we realize it's not like either of us is taking a side on left or right.
Well, what side am I possibly taking if I think the whole thing is going to fucking shit? If I think both sides are taking it to shit,
Right.
What side
but
am I
here's
taking?
here's the trigger. It's like, but yet you point to maybe it's
yeah, I point to one specific
one side.
circumstance that
circumstance that happens to his side.
right. Usually it's it there's
Because
like,
that's what you know of, because that's what you've
No,
through your
no,
media
no.
experienced. But
So-
we can
so-
project that to say, well, both all of the
so
Supreme
media
Court,
media
like-
and personal interaction, like it's not just media, there is also exposure to actual people, and the problem I'm facing again is that it doesn't matter which side I'm listening to, it's the same.
Right.
It's like they're on a repeat loop. No matter what point you interject with, it's like, oh, you've taken it from that side, or you've taken it from this side. Like,
it's always
how the fuck
knee-jerk
do you know?
reaction, and this is because value is automated. Everything is just it's through sound bites. Through you've said this sound bite, therefore you're on that side. Therefore, I'm going to punish you.
Yes, these contracts that are everything is being lifted up to said contracts.
We are being weaponized as the rewarder and punisher of this system based on sound bites that either the left or the right says typically, which we all know if what you say
it's worse than that
comes from which side.
It's not. It's worse than that. It's not the left or the right, because the left and the right are the same ubiquitous entity. So
right,
that's relatable though. It simply presents itself as left and right. Like they're all in bed with each other at the top. Like they have their own deals. They have their own contracts going on. They don't give a flying fuck about the actual divide.
Now here's like something in right wing spheres would talk about the uniparty, saying that both the Republicans and Democrats are the same in the same bed, same team, just continually effing everybody over. Right, that's a right wing. I don't know if that's on the left side.
There's truth to it. It's just not. It's not as fancy as it's being said. It's not a left or right divide. It's elite and poor divide, and on the elite side, it needs to present itself as either left or right to the poor, so that the poor can munge out and give money back up, so that the conflict remains. Because the conflict is like the one thing that feeds the money machine.
It's giving power.
It's the motivator for reward and punishment. The reward is always monetary, and the punishment is always physical.
Like you could think of as the people at the bottom of the pole ladder, so to speak, have nothing. Like are almost nothing, but it's not true. Each one of us is so very powerful in our own space, in the space that we are, and we are able to through this kind of tether network be manipulated constantly through the media feeds to do this or that action.
It's like utilizing my anger to hurt you, because the system deems that you need to be hurt somehow.
Right. Yeah, and divide and conquer is a very old idea. Right.
So, overall, it's not a blame game, which I fucking hate. The blame game is another systemic charlatanism of trying to attribute punishment.
This is why I always want to come back to the axiological conspiracy. The problem of meaning of value.
Okay.
I always want to bring it back to that, but of course people want to fight and this and that. Oh, but I'm conservative. No, I'm progressive or whatever. The problem, like, why should progressive fight conservative? It's two parts of life. That body must change as it goes, and it must conserve what brought it there, right?
Right. So
it must be in together, but it's not because of this conspiracy. It conserves
the thing that changes, right?
Sure.
So for something to change, that thing needs to be conserved.
The ability of it even to do that, right? Yeah, it's like if you think
otherwise,
about it.
Otherwise, it's not that thing anymore. Okay. It's like that. If you change enough planks on a boat, is it the same boat? It's a question.
Right.
What changes? What is being conserved? And it's all based on the point of view. If you're the boat, it's you. Your parts are changing. If you're the parts, the boat is. You're on this boat. You're on that boat. You're on.
Now
you're
now
in
you're
a tree.
floating.
You're
now you're free.
Now you're rotten. Whatever.
You're free.
So like the question itself paints the context. The context gives the answer. Right? This is why that question is elusive. Because it requires you to paint the context first, and that context will drive your answer.
Right.
And whatever context you will give it will absolutely give a conclusive answer, but without that context, there is no conclusive answer. And that's like what?
Right.
Well, what are we talking about?
And people want to have mind games where they can abstractly make these conclusions. That's where you have law.
It's the same thing of one-handed clapping, or if the tree falls on the forest and there's nobody to hear it. What's the context? Are you calling sound the context? Yeah, then the sound will have been produced. Are you calling hearing the context?
Right. But you can sit and question that method, but yet that's how civilization, through the plateaus of commodification, that's how it's all built up, through these automated protocol specifications of it. If this, do this. If that, do that.
Which means arbitrary context.
Yeah,
the context
as
is
if
arbitrary.
the context doesn't matter. As if it doesn't.
So this gives like this weird leeway for these contracts to do switcheroos. If you remember, contracts is what divides the values of accounts, right? And it's law and it's arbitrary. If you switch them around, which was exactly what we're doing, then not only is the system being laundered in one sense, it's being re-laundered after the fact by switching around those rules.
Because in the contract there's this like nebulous black hole, which is just like money is going to spit out of this hole, or you have to get sucked money into it.
Yeah.
Who cares like where it went? You don't know.
Yeah, and then you take this black hole, and then you switch the rules inside of it, and so all of a sudden it operates differently, but nobody knows why.
Right.
And everybody's got to just take it. Up the bum.
Arbitrarily.
Because somebody signed a piece of paper. Somebody they've never met, never talked to,
Right.
never considered, never actually negotiated with in any capacity whatsoever. And this should happen somehow.
So yeah, everything's so abstracted, so obfuscated. That's our capital O term. We use obfuscation. That nobody could ever make sense of any of it. We're all just in this like these isolated little islands of our own tiny bit of knowledge, but we don't know beyond this market, this interaction, this
with
commodity interaction with the market. Commodity in, commodity out contract. Boom, boom. You've got all these ports set up. Here's how you get that. Here's how you get this.
And it's getting worse in the sense that
you have no vision.
Things like friendships are guided by such things. For example, like obviously not our interpersonal one, but it could be, because like for example, if I was in a much more dire situation than I was, and all I could do is rely on you, and you would be like, I can't support another fucking family.
Yeah.
Right? Like, just like throwing it out there and like
let me get 3 more jobs.
right? Like, what the fuck? you can't even, even with your like affinity with the gift economy, everything you understand about it, neither of us is able to do that for each other, because the market is planted right in between us, and we'll have to churn money one way or another to do anything.
Right. Including quote-unquote crime. Right? That's a market interaction. Steal from this.
Crime only makes sense in the context of a market, because in the gift economy, if you're simply taking what you need,
right,
how are you stealing? What are you... From where are you stealing, to be honest?
Right. Yeah. There's plenty of nuance in that, and we always, even in my own head, I get the knee-jerk reaction, like, oh, that couldn't work. Like, oh, you can't base a society off of giving or whatever.
No, you can't work with the current society to do any of that.
Right. So
my dad has a great point about like everything is so distanced from itself. That's the same point I have too.
We did bring this up before too, where the middle to upper middle class is the only one who could possibly understand and have the ability to do anything about it to help transform.
The trade guild membrane has to be explicit. Like, it has to be in place and sufficient enough in its capacity to actually maintain anybody who's not within their means monetarily.
Right. And
That's
do
a
you
huge gift.
see that? I kind of see that as like, say, corporate entities with
Well,
with a footprint, with
those are
with
the only
a
entities
storefront.
with that power.
Right.
That's just the reality of it. So in order to create that kind of guild,
Right.
you have to go all the way to corporate.
So big picture, this thing is kind of like
Tall order.
not even a Portal Mountain franchise. Simple.
But still,
It doesn't seem too bad.
It's not too bad, but it's also, well.
It's basically, you know what?
Buddhism has been around for 2,500 years, and we're still not all Buddhists.
We in a sense are reinventing the kind of religious church structure in a sort of way. If you think about like the highest ideals of helping your community and all this kind of stuff.
I think of Buddhism, but yeah.
Right. Church in a generic sense. I don't mean a particular
But that's what
denomination.
I'm saying. Buddhism has been around for 2,500 years, and yet not everybody's a Buddhist. And you can.
Right.
That's for the same reason that we will not achieve the quote-unquote ideal.
Right. Right. No, that's not the point.
It's within that. It's within there. It might not be the immediate point.
Well, I guess the motive, you could say.
Oh yeah.
The point, sure, yes. The point, oh, it's beautiful.
The motive is like, what else would you do with your time?
Yeah. Motive is we like. And with that, we shall be right back. We back?
I just can't listen.
But
But the subject matter.
yes. I understand your version. Being
I'm tool influenced, okay?
Uh,
it's hard to come back from that.
sure, yeah.
Me, it's hard to come back from like really meaningful art to
But you
Kinda like
don't understand worship though.
attempts at.
So you're not devotion. You're like opposite of devotional.
Sure, no, it's
you
not
don't
correct to
understand
say I
that.
don't understand worship. It's not. That's not correct to say.
Okay, well I'm just
I would.
blasting back, so defend
I
yourself.
don't think I would have articulated the entire devotional temperament if I had no inclination towards it to some degree.
I meant like your history, your what you're
I
comfortable,
don't behave devotionally,
what you're comfortable with.
but
Right.
I certainly sense it, feel it, and have some capacity for its articulation.
Mhm.
That one time we went to that lunch, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, my own experiences were aligned with what he was
Yeah.
saying, and so I tried to get on it
Mhm.
as fast as I could before I lost it, kind of
Yep.
deal.
We must meet people where they are, in their story. Everyone
Yeah.
is telling themselves a story in their own head. That's how most people are comfortable in existing, let's say.
Right.
And that's what you have to become aware of the story so that you can meet them in their story.
Well, more than that, you have to cut out your own story. That's the difficulty for me and for you, for the most part.
Yeah, as far as like listening to people and having a conversation, but you want ideally for your story to be a part of theirs somehow, right? But your own internal monologue or your own ideas or thoughts have to be sidelined, and it's more
Yeah.
difficult for you than it is for me, I think.
Yeah.
In order to like really jump on board with like their story and like feeling their story
It's not so much.
from their perspective, kind of thing.
It's not a matter of difficulty. It's
It feels
it's-
arbitrary, right?
arbitrary, repetitive, and it's difficult to be interested. Like, I can do it, but it takes a lot of fucking energy, and I have like this over top layer that basically says to me is like,
It's just like whipping you.
I've heard all of this before. This is the exact same
Yeah.
things. How come they have never heard of this before? How come they're not applying solutions that they would have heard of
Yeah.
before?
Right. It's kind of like slotting into an archetype, a vast archetype in which many people's whoever you could be listening to at the moment, you could just jump it into that bucket.
But then
Of the
I'll
archetype.
but then I'll have an emotional breakdown, and of course it all comes right back to me as to why the fuck people don't make sense. So, like 6 to 1, half a dozen to the other. I experience the same thing, and it allows me to, at the very least, come back to that and rethink the situation.
Right.
The
It gives it
hardest
more
part-
credence or whatever. I
The
guess.
hardest part is that I'll have more nuance, but I'll be late. Whereas the situation I'll be in will have less nuance, and I won't handle it in the same way as I could have if I had the nuance. It's a weird ass fucking cycle to be trapped
Yep.
in.
Yeah, I understand. It helps better when people are gracious, you could say, or have express grace.
That's kind of like where I live.
And grace is such a huge thing for society, for a community, for relationship of any kind. that look, we all fuck up. Or,
I don't think
or
I don't think it's just a huge deal.
We-
I think it's necessary.
of course, we all
I
fuck
mean,
up. We all make mistakes,
fundamental necessity.
and we all
right?
notice when other people do that. But
It's
this is
fatal without grace. I'll put it that way, because I take it back
Right.
to the infant scenario.
And this comes back to the judge making a judgment on a case, right? The judge as human can have grace, can express grace, whereas the law, as it is,
It doesn't
grace
know
doesn't exist. That's why an AI.
the entire concept of
How
grace
can,
is bypassing the law.
How could you trust an AI to express grace? That doesn't make any sense.
The entire concept of grace bypasses the law. That bypasses the arbitration, bypasses the calculation.
Right. That's a big danger.
It completely circumvents it. So that is a situation systemically fought against. To circumvent the system is against the system.
Yeah, it's punished.
So
Grace is punished.
So grace is like a no-no, a taboo.
Right. Yeah, that reminds me, like, when you're in traffic and someone cuts you off and, like, everybody sees it, you're supposed to honk at them. And if you don't honk at them, actually now you're the asshole, because you just, like,
Blocked
you're
everybody
supposed
else.
to tell them, you're supposed
That
to
happened
show
to me
this
yesterday.
a-hole, you must honk at them, because now
Oh.
they think they're okay and they're getting away. And now 9 people hate you and they don't even care about who the person who did
I
the
had a
cutting.
similar but different situation just yesterday. I honked at them, yes, but the reason I did that was not because I was
Were you
afraid
braking
of
or
no, just
to alert people
They-
around?
no, it was just weird. It was like
You just wanted to honk.
no, there was a reason for it.
Okay.
The circumstance was weird. They stopped. They weren't in the turning lane, but they stopped on a green light.
Yeah.
And I honked at them because they made me stop,
Yeah.
which means if anybody's behind me will have to stop and whatever.
Right.
And what they're doing is just
Not
not
according to the rules.
to the rules of the road. So I'm
Right.
like, Pimp. They moved off. No problem.
Yeah, like they're probably looking at their phones
So the,
somehow.
I think they were looking for a way to turn.
or confused.
Yeah.
Which that's not an excuse either. Just
Right. So
GTFO.
so the only reason I honked at them had nothing to do with me being mad at them per se, like in any I had felt nothing. I was just like, okay, I should not be in the middle of the road. There's gonna be people behind me, and I'm stopping here for no reason.
right. So now you're starting to have
So I'm like, okay,
bad things are happening. Let's honk.
yeah, wake
Right.
up, wake
No, I
up,
get
buddy.
it. Mm-hmm.
I think it was an older couple, to be honest.
I don't know what it is. The last year, especially, but the last couple years, and you maybe could. I mean, you've seen traffic, but the amount of just completely confused drivers, like they're out to lunch, confused. They're in the wrong spot. They're going the completely wrong speed. Something is like completely off. That I've seen just this year, like the last year, is like way more than like years combined.
As much as I hesitate to say it, I think there's merit in saying it. I think it's the influx of
New drivers, well, let's say
From-
immigrants or
there's a very big kick in the Indian population, and I don't know if you've seen.
right, but they drive in India too, don't they?
I don't know if you've seen how they drive in
Yeah.
India.
Well, smarter, like ideally with your
but it does shine some kind of
you
light
have to
as
have
to
your
what you're looking
your head
at.
on a swivel, don't you? Looking all around to drive in India. So why would they have a problem here? I don't get
So,
that. No, it's like I don't know what it is. It's super
Okay,
new
I'm
drivers.
basing this is off of a stereotype, but there is this famous YouTube video of an intersection in India where the lights go on and off at every different interval. Nobody gives a flying fuck about the lights. Everybody is just taking whatever spot they can.
Right.
I believe some of that has to do with it. Like just taking whatever spot you can, not really realizing that traffic flows actually does move differently
Maybe.
in Canada.
Yeah,
moves
you
differently than-
It could be onto something there.
It moves differently than it does in Israel, for example.
But so it just lets you sit somewhere for whatever. 'Cause I see that like that's coming up too.
So the instances I've had to deal with had to do with like, you know those center lanes that are take the spot if you need to turn off or on.
Right.
So you're not supposed to like get out and turn into one of those lanes. You're supposed to like go into your lane because the center lane is not.
I think you're right, but that's a daring move that I would take
Okay.
at an advanced level.
Bayfield. We're talking Bayfield.
Yeah, you just can't get out. You can't wait for both sides of traffic to stop. You have
Okay,
to
so-
whenever you can.
So
But the problem is,
so the
people
scene
coming
is-
from the other side, they're turning into that lane too. Meanwhile, you're coming
That
out
wasn't
of here,
happening in this
and there
case.
could be a collision.
That wasn't
Like,
happening in
there's
this
so many
case.
bad things that could happen.
We were going down the hill. They were coming up from the Future Shop, ex-Future Shop Plaza. And they were taking like the center lane, and they started to move into my lane while I was right there. So I had to like jerk my wheel, but I did that before I even
That's
looked
kind
at
of
my
the
mirror.
whole. So they try merging, but they don't,
Right.
They're not. They're just
That's,
assuming.
That's what I was talking about. Like it's these kind of small decisions that are so wrong for the context.
As long as they're
That's what I'm
As
talking
long
about.
as they're like super aware, like that, if they actually
Bring-
start drifting and you just kept going forward as if you didn't see them, and it like as long as they would have then just not merged, then
Well,
that's kind of okay.
It's hard to call. It's hard to like place.
It feels
anymore.
like bullying is
So,
way in,
so
right?
first of all, adrenaline. My memory
It's
is
just because you're a new driver.
My memory is, I was a new driver. This happened when I was much more fresh, if you will. Like I don't get into these situations
As in, like-
as often because I can anticipate them more.
half a year ago. A year
Yeah,
ago?
like I just wasn't expecting that to happen, and they did that.
Yeah.
Now I'm
It's
watching for
it's
it.
like it's bullying. It feels like bullying, but it's if they're paying attention, then it's okay because you can also bully. Be like, fuck, I'm just driving. Get a dash cam.
Yeah,
That's my number one
That's my
advice
next
to you right now.
That's my next step.
Because
Actually,
people will do shit. Get a good front and back viewing.
Yep. No, yeah,
dash
that's
cam.
actually on the in the books for
Heck yeah.
purchases.
I've been thinking about that.
So, this is not a jab at anybody who's from India, but like those driving habits don't
It's
work
totally
here.
different.
They just don't work here.
Yeah, like a lot of the Middle East and all that, driving is totally different idea, right? It's
It's swerving around fucking cliffs.
like, but people are on much higher alert when it's like everyone's kind of going, everyone's nuts. You know that you're going into that, like
That's
everyone's
not-
a bully. It's
That's
crazy.
Not fair. That's not fair because if you come to a place like this where that's not expected, and you try to do that,
But it still works.
it's way more dangerous.
Because you have so many people around you not expecting that. But hey,
Exactly.
this is how culture changes, right?
If-
It's called the Darwin
I mean-
Darwin Award.
Well, the people who are in the culture should not be
If
the
you're not paying
should not
attention-
be the receivers.
Yep. Well, that's,
Like this change.
everyone's doing their part. We're gonna make smarter traffic
It's
out
not
there.
it's not a dig at immigration. It's more like there's a certain lack of respect in these kinds of situations where it's
Some spots you have to wait forever. You will never get a spot like to turn out. So you just have to like
okay.
flash your lights sometimes, or like have eye
Okay.
contact and
I can
Just
talk
boot it?
I can talk to that situation too. So you know the Tim Hortons on Bayfield, just on the right side of Cundles.
yeah.
So you turn on Cundles.
So Cundles and Bayfield. yeah.
Cundles and Bayfield. You turn right, and then you pass the fueling station. You pass the gas station, and then there's a Tim Hortons.
Like Petro Canada there.
Yeah. And then right past
Right.
it, there's a Tim Hortons. So this idiot was trying to take a left on the exit onto Bayfield near those fucking Cundles lights.
Mm.
And it got to a point of where the car in front of me was
Yeah.
just like got so pissed off at this guy.
Yeah, like just get out
just
of the
like
way. Start turning right.
no, they went
Went over
around
the
him.
left
They went
side.
around
Yeah.
him, went to the right, Eventually, they went to the right, cut off a whole bunch of people,
Yeah,
and
like
their
complete tools.
in their frustration,
Right.
and I'm just like sitting there behind all of this, going like,
Interesting. Yeah, watch out for that. Watch out for that, because it's going to happen to you too. Like, I mean, you'll see people do this, and you're the ones who have to slam
taking
the
a
brakes
left
on, or
on
something.
goddamn Bayfield on a non-light fucking intersection. Are you insane? Ugh. I mean, sure, this is contextual information, but if you know the road, you know not to take the left.
Right. Yeah.
And if you do, you find a way
So
to go around.
they're not from
down
around
the-
here.
You need to go around somewhere and find your light to make that fucking turn, because otherwise
Right.
you're not going to get the space.
Yeah. There is an exit on Cundles from that corner. You go there, and then you can turn left at the lights, at the Bayfield lights.
You go right from the Tim Hortons. Then there is that.
Oh, you can't
small,
connect up through the
there's a
Petro
s-
Canada?
there's
like
small
a big
street.
barrier wall.
No,
isn't
no, no.
there?
You pass the plaza, the pita pit. You pass the Polish store and whatever. There's that turn that lets you go into the mall on the one
Yeah.
side, and back to Cundles on the other
Right.
side. You go back to Cundles. You take the left lane. You're done.
Yep. But if you're right on that corner with the gas station, you could just cut right out to that intersection.
You're never
that
given the
junction.
you're never given the space though.
There's a like small alley you can cut to that. There's like a max there.
Oh yes. If you take the Cundles route.
Right.
So
Yeah,
again,
see, yeah.
again, you can't go to Bayfield.
Either
Not-
way, you
not-
can't. This isn't gonna work.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
That's
Like this,
wild.
this moron
I
was trying to
understand
take
it.
a left on the fucking Bayfield. Like fuck.
Like this, driving is an area where we all are supposed to be a team and share protocols and do cooperation.
Just like the internet. I like that analogy. Me too. Me too.
Yeah, I'm gonna write it. So yeah, it's kind of like it's a resource that we all share in some way, right?
The road.
We
is
all
the-
have the
road-
ability
The road
to
is the limited resource.
Both mess up and both to use and to mess up the road. We all can do that. By virtue of access to it, anybody can ruin the road
Well,
or
you-
have it run well.
So
right? You can just park your car and it's effed.
Here's the phrase.
The whole thing is just gone.
Check it out. Here's the phrase. You're not stuck in traffic.
You are traffic.
You are traffic.
Right. To those who complain about, oh my God, there's so much traffic.
Well, you are.
It's insane.
You're literally it for somebody else.
Right. And it's kind of like a lowest common denominator situation. Like, just because I feel like I could drive through Barrie on the 400 at 100 kilometers an hour steady, I think I could do it. But there's like the 1 out of 10 or 20 who just can't go around the corner up. They have to slow down. So whatever it is, the main stretch in Barrie 400 always is packed, Essa to Dunlop, right?
I think construction has a lot to do
No,
with it.
it's
no?
always been like that. It always will. It has something to do with there being a hill.
Huh.
Just people naturally slow down,
I don't
and they
know-
can't help it.
I don't normally go on
So
the
that's
highway.
lowest common denominator, right?
I pretty much just start at this point, but I just kind of avoid it.
Highway?
Like I just don't inside of Barrie is like I have all my routes figured out,
Well,
so to speak. So it's like if I
yeah.
want to go there, I just take this route. If I want to go there, I just take that route, and it's never busy and it's never anything.
From your perspective,
I mean, sometimes
I wouldn't worry about it because you're driving, you're getting experience with more interactions. The highway's kind of boring.
I don't know if
to me.
I don't know if I'm
You're on, then you're off. Boom.
Yeah.
And you're already at like your destination, right? Like you can just cruise through the city. Like that's why often I don't take the highway, just because I want to drive by the parks and like the trees and just see what's going on and what's changing.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's no need to like just speed down, tunnel down, barrel down a roadway.
I don't know if I mentioned it, but one of the things that like made me feel very much okay with highway driving since my test.
Yeah.
You know how when you're I don't know if you remember being a new driver. But when you come off the highway, there's like this discrepancy in your perceiving of speed and the actual speed you're driving. So it's like it feels like
I
you're
still get
driving
that.
way slower than you
Yeah.
should be. And when I did the test thing, which is my last highway
Yeah,
driving,
that's that spot rate.
It
like
didn't
right
even-
when you're slowing down.
it
like,
didn't
oh,
even
you're
register.
speeding.
But
Yeah.
it didn't happen. That didn't happen. I wasn't even. I literally,
Oh, you mean you slowed right down to 60 for the off?
and I felt it. Like, so you know how you have a feeling for your speed that you don't always need to check your speedometer,
Okay.
kind of a thing, and you like
Right.
you know you're going too fast, or you know you're going
You
too
learn
too
the
slow
different
from,
context
from 50.
that you're in.
Like, you like you feel 50, right? Like there's that feeling you're going 50 because you're so used to it.
Right?
So that discrepancy between highway and 50 didn't happen anymore. It was like I felt the 50.
No
Like
problem.
I jumped right into it without even thinking about it. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, I have to be cognizant of that discrepancy.
Sure.
And then not feeling it, I was like, huh. Well, that's fucking cool.
Right?
It's not a
Right.
grand story. It's just a
Did
story.
I get you a beer? You open it? Okay. Right.
It was just like a, huh. I'm actually
Pardon?
like in the
Getting it.
in the zone. Like,
Intuiting it,
right. Like
feeling it.
a lot of my concerns are disappearing. For example, I don't mention it as much. I don't mention being a driver or anything like that because it's
Mhm.
don't
It's
give a
natural.
shit. It's just like
Yep. You're not no longer bragging every time about how comfortable you feel driving.
right, because I'm always comfortable. There's no incidences
Of course.
anymore.
Why
Like,
wouldn't you be comfortable?
there isn't that. Oh shit! I had. Fuck! I'm lying. I actually misjudged the distance I had to the intersection, so I calculated my braking point way too late. So I did one of those.
Did it make squeals?
Oh yeah. It was one of those. I'm like, but
Now, were you in a hurry to get to that junction?
no.
Why didn't you start phasing
Miss-
down your speed to begin with?
I
Don't,
thought-
don't
I-
set a point. Just start
I
phasing
thought
down.
no. I literally my 3D vision was warped. Just I don't know.
Did you
I
still
don't-
have the gas on?
No,
Okay, so
I
you
was
made a decision to let go.
I was thinking it's like okay, maybe not. No, I'm
Hesitated.
far
That's
enough.
weird.
No, like
No, that's weird. That's all too close. You should have been staging down your speed, because you've got nowhere to go.
so.
Why should
here's
you be
here's
faster?
here's the intersection in question. You probably will understand why that happened. I'm going down Ferndale. I just crossed Cundles. Not Cundles. Fuck. Not Cundles. Arda?
Arda.
That's the one that goes from
Yeah,
Essa,
crosses.
right?
There's the wings.
Yeah. So I just crossed Arda. There's that school. And then there's that almost like hidden behind the houses
we're only doing like
intersection.
50. How could you school your tires stopping there?
No, I made the decision too late. I was like,
Still, you're only doing 50 in that zone.
in my head,
60,
in my,
55.
in my my head, the road was ahead. So when I recalibrated, that's when I pressed the brakes. So my mapping mechanism was showing me something different than what I was seeing.
Like one of those distance and speed effects.
I can't really explain.
Remember
it.
playing, what's that game? It was before Guitar Hero. It's like with the PS2 controllers. Just do the top rockers.
Rockstar? No. Rock Hero?
No, it wasn't Guitar Hero. It was before that. Amplitude.
Yes. Yes. You guys were all over it. I couldn't fucking handle it.
Love that game. But you'd stop playing, like when the song ended, it just, everything is coming at you, but it's still, right? Because that's what you're seeing the whole game, is things coming at you, and then it stops.
It
And
was something like that, but like imagine the distance simply registered wrong. Like it happened very fast. Obviously, like
I
it was
could
a
see
huge.
that.
It was a brain fart.
It is a very kind of unique.
And
It's a
then I
unique
would
junction.
realize
That's
it,
at
and I'm like,
Somerset. It's on Somerset that junction.
So
You're kind of coming downhill. There's a school area, and it's
And then
like
it's
almost
hidden.
hidden a bit.
yeah,
Like in how flat it is and how you're approaching it.
and I thought it was, and I used my
So it looked
mental map.
smaller,
I used my mental map,
right? Yeah, it does.
Instead
It
of
does
what I
look
was
smaller.
seeing.
I think.
and so to my credit, if you will, like I stopped before it was green going that way, and I was only
Right.
as far as I blocked the crosswalk.
Just went over a bit,
I just blocked the crosswalk. Nobody used.
right?
It was just a.
Oops.
That hasn't happened for a while.
Yep. Gotta train them neurons.
So now, of course, that spot. Is
Oh, we're a lovely couple. Says based Brooks. Thanks, Brooks. We believe so as well. We're taking a break though. Be right back. All right, we're back. Yep. Welcome, Brooks.
Love seat. Right. Got it.
Brooks, who is based. That's good. We like based.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Good to be based. I wonder if they are still on. Just they popped in and out to
Yeah, Shane.
drop that message. Is it though? I don't know. Love seat. Oh, this is the love seat. Okay. I guess, yeah. A lovely couple and some rainbows.
Okay.
So beautiful. But the name based. So these are sound bites, right? And it's like, does that message slot perfectly into the left-right paradigm?
Well, I mean,
Basically.
I mean,
so we're
what-
supposed to take that offensively as being on the left? Is that right? So
Yeah.
we projected certain sound bites. Maybe it was my hair.
I mean,
Um,
the response to this, if it were like, for example, like, how dare they?
I don't know. I'm just.
You know, like what I mean? Like then, then it
the
would
only
have
thing
been.
I'm upset about
it's
is
pretty
that
big,
they left.
Yeah. I was gonna say upset, but yeah, the fact that they were leaving and
That's it. Just nothing.
yeah. So we'll leave that as a mystery.
Yep.
I
I don't know
guess.
when they sent that. It was like probably 10 minutes ago
Hmm.
plus or something like that.
Must have been very important to us.
Yeah.
All right, let's leave that as a mystery then, eh?
Yeah. Well, I think I had the be right back sign on or something. Anyways, whatever.
Unless you want to divulge any information.
No,
of
no.
any
It's
sort.
it's nice to
They reckon?
kind of talk protocol, and we're talking driving on a shared roadway, a shared medium, right? So there's protocols.
Oh wait, is this an example?
We need to cooperate. Well, might as well be,
It literally is one.
right? And we all have the ability to screw up the entire thing
Oh,
at any moment. So,
So
there's
check this-
responsibility to it. Right?
Hold on, hold
There's agency.
the whole idea of conspiracy, charlatanism, it not being like overt rather than covert. Like nobody in the right mind is going to actually prolong it, but it somehow promote.
Try to promote.
Yeah, it somehow goes itself. This is a great example. It's like taking a tiny little bit of intake and just pouring out that soundbite in
Right.
for
Yeah.
the gaze,
So
or
this,
something like that.
whatever it is, this
That's
person
how I interpreted it. Anyway.
joined for like a minute, received. Well, I don't know
Nothing.
what sound bites at the time. We would
Yeah,
have
yeah.
to like review what we were talking about driving probably, and then processed from this moment that came up. Processed according to the rules, some like solution to the moment. That is to type this message and leave.
And the weird thing is about this message
Right.
is like
It's
like
automatic,
the correlation,
fully automatic.
But look at the correlation between this message and the content that they would have probably encountered. Like what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
How is
Well,
this?
thanks. No, like that's
Like, how-
perfect.
how?
This is a blessing from God.
It's like, but it's like it's a curious correlation if you don't mind. I'm trying to identify how do you go from talking about driving, the fact that yes we are two guys sitting on a couch.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah. So
Cool.
there's
Um,
less than charity.
It's the opposite of charity. It's
So there's
like
a hostile
it's like
side.
boom, you're in this category.
And charity kind of
Huh.
seems like a bad word in many cases.
Well, charity is the
Systemic.
charlatanistic expression
Appropriation
of the
of
gift
gift.
economy.
Right.
So it's already hijacked, if you will.
Donate now. For every 50 cents, we can afford one potato. Donate now.
Eat recycled food. Okay for the environment. No, good for the environment.
Yes.
Okay for you.
It's okay.
Actually, have you seen you've seen the old Judge Dredd movie before?
No, we must get back on track here because this is the last. Otherwise, it's going to be another episode of
Fine.
the Axiological
I-
conspiracy,
I agree. Fine.
right? So, aside from the driving stuff, and which that we could maybe bring that up as context.
Driving is a good analogy for how we talk online.
The like anonymity,
Drive by,
right?
honk.
Hmm. And yet, I thought it does seem as a decent example, which most people would understand, of what happens when we share a resource. Right? There are courteous drivers, quote unquote. That's not like, it can be one way or the other. Like, this is a medium, and we can infuse the medium with isomorphism or dysmorphism. That's our basic divide, right? You can be an asshole all for yourself based on the ego, trying to extract value out of this thing without giving a shit about context.
Check this out.
Or you can be a part of a living artery of society.
Check this out. The road is one of those places, one of the few places in which the system is actually limited in its way to arbitrarily contract out rules and regulations. So reward and punishment are far less arbitrary than
it's kind of a Wild West
than they would be otherwise. And the reason for that is because the road keeps moving, and it gives outcomes all the time. Crashes. So the only adjustments
I was
that you can
thinking
really make,
the fact that you can have a decent car and put the pedal down and escape damn near anything as far as repercussions, as long as the skill is high enough.
not the trajectory I was going for whatsoever. What I'm talking about is the isomorphism of road traffic is directly correlated to the non-arbitrariness of the kind of rules that are imposed upon traffic. So it's one of those situations in which the contract itself is being limited by the circumstances versus the other way around, where you have a more arbitrary contract.
I suppose
dictating
circumstances,
the circumstance.
I think, are maybe they're always should be somewhat available, or in many cases they're obvious to the eye. But yeah, like road vehicles, it's obvious why safety is an issue.
Right.
Because
so you have
you're
immediate
going this
feedback.
fast. We all know what happens when you crash. When you stop, if you're doing 100K or 80 mile an hour, 70 mile an hour, even that's enough to seriously injure you. If you come to a complete stop, you could die.
I've been in a
instantly,
car crash.
right?
I've been in a car crash that went 16 feet from 80.
So I think we all
to
understand that
zero.
and give it more
It
attention.
hurt. It really did fucking hurt.
Right.
I was wearing a seatbelt, thankfully. So the only thing that hurt was
Bruising
my
along
sternum.
the chest. Yeah.
It still cracks. I was 16.
Yeah.
I was
That's
16.
wild.
I'm
Trauma
40.
stays with us too. The body keeps a score on that shit.
Yeah, I couldn't sleep.
And it can be released. There are
I
therapies
remember
in
not
that.
being able to sleep on my side because if the pressure was on it, there was definitely a fracture kind of a thing going on.
So people look at the world, oh, it's shit. You're correct. Even look at the world, the society, the city around you, we're at the top, not we're at the top, but being not completely crushed, you're able to visualize and see all around you people are suffering, and homeless, drug addicts, there's people strewn around the place here, and that's been getting more visible, and there's no it's even against the law to provide a bed overnight. There's so many hoops and regulations you jump through to be able to provide any kind of service like that. Like a church, you can't just put beds and have people sleep, right? Whatever need is demanded, I need a place to sleep, you can't just give it.
Okay, so
There's demands, and supply is actively cut off by the state.
I'm not in the way that you like to imagine. We're not talking about lack of funding. We're talking about red tape of rules and regulation that stave off what's called liability. So, the primary reason why safer spaces cannot be given to people
because it can't be insured
is because
for all the kinds of crazy
if
shit.
anything happens to them, they'll be liable.
Right.
So, the weirdest aspect of this is that the spaces that are then left after the fact are even less safe. It's just that there's less liability involved for everybody for whatever happens. So basically, it's
spin
like
on the
passing the buck.
insurance industry.
It's bizarre in that it's
Like the
considered
insurance
to be
industry
the positive.
exists only where all potentiality for outside thinking or activity is reduced to a set core of things that are allowed to happen based on what can be insured.
Neglecting the reality of the actual
that
situation.
ropes in the the ability of any corporation to act.
The only activity
So
corporations.
it's like systemically sabotaged against the
So-
gift economy, right?
So the only activity that they do is they collect.
what do you
They
do,
collect a
like-
bank account. They collect a bank account of.
Do you have people
of-
sign
of-
a waiver? Like if you come in here, you just have to sign your name and like what is that the membrane? Like how do people get in?
Oh, you don't.
Right. There's got to be legal like it's probably a legal war. Like many battles. And I don't know where it's being fought or anything like that.
Say you get into one of these quote unquote shelters. Because of the process that you've been through, it's a tit for tat, all out war, territorial war, of get as much as you can out of as little as available that is shared between all of you.
Right.
So
It's like a tension
So even
between
if
who gets what.
So even if you get into a shelter, you're now subject to robbery, rape, any one of those wonderful things that places one ego above the other
Right.
at any cost. Because, well, what have you got to lose?
It's like it's an institution.
You basically have nothing to lose and everything to gain at that point.
I don't know too much about these institutions, facilities, what's available, what's out there, but you would think
I actually
like
paraphrasing Jesse here.
like
from
shelters
our
have like bulletproof glass because like women's shelters, for example, because often men will be trying to get their vengeance and like literally kill people, right?
There's
Not
that.
like say women and men, but that's
No, there's that. Statistically speaking, men perpetrate a lot of the violence that goes around in our society.
right.
It's just a fact that there's an overwhelming majority of violence that are occurring through men. Whether we perpetrate any of it or not, it still doesn't count. That doesn't speak to the
Yeah,
fact that
it is. It's really
by the
wild.
majority.
Like the shelters
it's
are all
overwhelming.
split up. Like there's a women and children's, and there's a men's. So like if you as a family become homeless, you're split into the system. Like
Do
you're not still a family. Like that's done.
Do you remember me expressing
Which it seems really
this
fucked up.
sentiment that to get everything model-like and isomorphic with model, the world will have to be built first of all for children. I don't know if you remember me saying that. First for children, then for women, and then for men. It's like, if you do it in that order,
Interesting.
that will be the kind of world that where men don't get killed by men, where women don't get killed by men, and where children don't get killed by men.
That's a really interesting thought. That's up there with like the
And there's
the
a reason
native,
for this order.
native quote of like think ahead 7 generations for whatever action you're going to take.
And there is
Right.
reason behind the madness of this of this reasoning. Like it's not just random. The fact that why children first. I have children. First thing I notice is that nothing basically in my house is approachable to them without me supplying some kind of guardrail, safety, whatever barrier.
Yeah,
So just so that they don't get hurt
it's
first.
the law. This is the law.
So this is a world built for not children.
Right.
Knives,
Sure, yeah.
like the kitchen. Imagine
You're
the
right.
kitchen.
You're right. Yeah. I see that.
So there's like this first like so if you built the world
Yeah.
approaching safety of children first.
It doesn't mean
you
get
have-
rid of knives or anything
Exactly.
like that.
It means that they're not interested in going into those areas. That's what it means.
Well, the areas aren't accessible, like the knobs taken off the stove, for example. It's just not accessible.
Which is like the patchwork, if you will.
But this is
You recognize the problem.
degrees of coherence.
Yeah, you
moving through participation towards membership.
But this
right?
look at this patchwork. You turn off the knob. You get rid of the knobs, but you don't get rid of the stoves and the places that really are the problem.
Stoves?
Children and stoves don't need to be in the same spots.
But how do you turn it on? If the controls are way up there or whatever.
Okay, a little bit idealistic here. My point is not so much about getting rid of stoves, but like making the situation such that
here's what it is. The environment needs to be tiered in a way.
That's what I'm saying.
That your ignorant access to the environment is only at a certain not even participant guest level. And then through the guest membrane to participation, there are certain ways that you can learn through the mind to unlock access to participation. Beyond that, again, a set of locks, a membrane. So this is the environment everywhere is built that way.
And past participation,
once you're a member. We don't need to talk about children, but guests.
Right. Which children inhabit.
Yeah.
The environment that children
inherently
is the guest environment. They don't know.
They must go through.
They have a feeling that this person is actually supportive of me, so they're trusting of that. And
that'd be participation.
The outcomes are good.
Right.
So yeah, you're hitting the nail on the head there. Children, women, then men. Why women next is because inherently the muscle mass problem, for one, but also an environment built for women tends to reciprocate towards men as a byproduct.
Right.
And it's almost a selfish way.
It's
a selfish way to describe it.
Nothing that comes out of that could possibly be unappreciated by men.
Mm-hmm. So we're talking about like better understanding of what abuse is, better understanding of what, for example, consent is. All of these kinds of things that don't really formulate themselves in man-centric spheres,
right,
except for specific nuanced situations, which don't become generalized like the way they are with women. Mm-hmm. So this generalization that
so it would
comes
have to be a
women,
focus to which men would be exposed to look back down the stack, I guess you could say.
And with those two worlds combined, the world for children, the world for women, the man's world becomes inherently supportive of them, because it's already a supportive framework. It's not an extra step. It's just a continuation, extension of that step.
And it's a very idealistic generalization of
sure.
what a woman is, or what womanhood, or the spirit of that is. Very idealistic. So any particular woman could be very much, if catered to, opposite of what we're talking about here.
Well, for one, it would allow for women to be literally comfortable within the world to begin with, right? And now, this is the idealism, but the observation from my perspective has always been that where women are comfortable, the men are too.
That's what I tried to say.
I've seen that.
It's impossible not to appreciate what's valued by women.
And if somebody needs more enumerated correlation for that, bars in which women are present are successful. Bars in which men are only are called dive bars.
Right.
That's not an accident. The comfort level of the more vulnerable dictates the comfort level of the less vulnerable. The more comfortable somebody is who is vulnerable, the absolutely more comfortable somebody who's less vulnerable is
Sure.
going to be.
Right.
It's not a hard calculation. It's not a difficult thought to realize. It's convoluted only from the perspective of we're not supposed to think this way.
Well, there's some power in that modeling, I believe.
So I'm not talking about genitals, and I'm not talking about age. So I'm not talking about for children in terms of age, and I'm not talking about for women in terms of genitals. I'm talking about the specific issues being raised for both groups. The most vulnerable and the second most vulnerable, with everybody else benefiting from that.
Right.
So
And the speaking of vulnerability reminds me of like shelter and like the necessity of taking care of and protecting, sheltering that which is vulnerable in order to be successful, to continue
Strengthen
to exist.
strengthen that which isn't vulnerable too. To build up
As
that
a natural
invulnerable
byproduct, but you don't have to cater to that. So
imagine the solid foundation where the vulnerability is taken care of, such that it takes care of the
I guess, like,
invulnerability.
the ways that some people are vulnerable, we're all potentially vulnerable in those ways.
So
Right? There's a
just a
something fundamentally shared.
Slide backtrack. Vulnerable, chaotic, invulnerable, ordered. So there's that dichotomy of order and chaos.
Right, but we all have bodies.
Vulnerable,
Right.
mind, invulnerable until the body's compromised. This is the exact same reasoning that I'm using for you need to protect the vulnerable part first so that it trickles up to the invulnerable.
Right.
Because once the body is deteriorated,
As a
the mind
focus.
is irrelevant.
As a focus, right? That makes sense. And I like the idea of like catering to a guest in the environment to the guest who doesn't know. So the environment itself should be set up in a way that
We should be very careful here. We don't want to label children as guests, and we certainly do not want to label women as participants and men as members.
I wasn't thinking. I
So we
noticed
don't-
that
we don't wanna
I
do
noticed
that.
we almost did kind of connect that.
That is.
But they're totally different
It-
categories.
It's applicable in a different context entirely, only in a mythological sense, but not in the.
It's technically applicable in any context.
No, what I'm saying is that it's part of the mythology rather than a physical attribution of, if you're a child, you must be a participant. If you're or I guess if you're a woman, you must be a participant.
So
and only
in
men
using,
can be members. That's the
in
wrong
using
way.
holonic modeling, we're able to easily simply multiply the two categories that we mentioned here. So the degrees of coherence with this degrees of vulnerability, let's say. Each we can use the degrees of coherence to describe many different things in each degree of vulnerability, like as learning,
Let me
learning
take this,
experiences.
let me take this a little bit more academically, slightly, and even present it even in a more palatable way, hopefully. In guest, you have children, women, and men. In participation, you have children, women, and men. In
That's what I meant,
membership,
multiply.
you have children, women, and men. They are children, women, and men are not distinct categories in that you can have a man child, a woman child. You can have an effeminate
A woman man or a man woman. Sure.
Fuck whatever the fuck it can be happening on the spectrum. Like, fine. That's not there's no contradiction between those ideas and what we're talking about. They're just not touching on those things specifically.
I agree with the caveat, and I would say that the women and children first. Like, this is an ancient meme in society which has been conserved for a reason. There's children, women, men. Right? This is a meme has been conserved.
It's
we're
a
just
muscle mass proximity.
using that.
It's a muscle mass proximity measurement.
Right.
The assumption being, of course, that children have the least capacity for work, women have more, and men have most. And again, this is in general, and this is based on like generalizing physiological traits of just
Right.
growing
So that's
muscle.
why we mention it, and I like that you brought it up, and I agree. It seems valid as a way of like shaping the environment or the concerns, or like what should we build the world? Who should we build it for? First, this and this and this.
And how can the strong muscle mass capacity exist if there isn't an intermediate and a basis for it? The build-up process itself. Right? So if you undercut it, undermine it,
exactly.
you're fucked.
You can't cater to one and not the other. It just destroys.
It's like saying slavery works because you don't have to feed the slaves. Well, sure, but you run out of slaves because they die.
Yep. It should be obvious. It shouldn't have to be stated. That conspiracy.
Well, the conspiracy itself is, I think we've already mentioned it, but the conspiracy itself has to do with taking capital V value and transforming it into quote-unquote value through axiology. Axiology is the window through which we see accounting. So we're talking about value being a double booking situation between two accounts, and the driver of that is a contract.
There's a thing gets
obfuscation.
inserted into the value calculation.
The contract, yeah.
I guess, right?
The contract is what drives what is calculated.
But it becomes, it changes, value calculation changes from a contextual flow into
Contractual.
the black hole contract, where the flow is like you flow into this black hole, and
whatever
something
radiation
comes
you can
something
get
comes out of this portal or something.
Yeah,
Trust us.
It's obfuscated in terms of what comes in does not express anything.
Right.
That what comes
And
out does not express anything that went in.
A point of breakdown when that's how when the economy was built.
You know what's interesting, and this is just me musing, is that we arrived at the concept of a black hole, talking about social aspects of communication and stuff like that, but it's the same situation that you arrive at in physics, in which you have a barrier where information simply goes in, and you have this kind of like wall
Membrane.
that you cannot use to determine what comes out, that you can't use to use what comes out of it to determine what went into it.
Mm-hmm. The event horizon, as they say.
Right, like the logical steps necessary to determine what happens next break down.
That kind of implies a fundamental unpredictability of the universe, sort of, that these membranes exist within our space-time.
It solidifies the uncertainty archetype that underlies the rest of the archetypes, of which 3 more mirrors appear.
Mm-hmm. Three more of the horizons.
So personal, your corporate, and your state archetypes, they're all parallels, right? They're all interacting, but they're also parallels of this situation. And it all starts with uncertainty. And that uncertainty comes down to this membrane, as you called it, or event horizon. The inputs simply do not determine what the
There's
output
no
is.
there's got to be like some kind of I'm thinking Turing complete, but that's a related maybe term. But the ability to reverse the calculation is not there, right?
Turing incomplete. The Turing problem, incompleteness theorem, contradictory theorems, they're all the same theorem.
Right.
They're actually they're all related in terms of
Pointing towards the same phenomena.
Like Turing proved the same thing that Gödel did, just using computation and focusing on a different phenomenon. But the outcome
Right.
proves the same.
We should
problem.
expand on that for later. Until then, we'll be right back.
Bewilderment or search is the first
The
step
reaction
of realization.
to
Like literally the
reaction to contradiction.
The reaction to realization that there is a contradiction, that there is shortage
Okay.
of information
Bewilderment
or search.
or search.
And
Continue search.
so
Continue search.
charlatanism feeds off the bewilderment. Search doesn't feed the charlatan at all and is punished. You don't want genuine searching. You want charlatanistic
Okay.
re resurgence.
With bewilderment, that implies a puzzlement, which is like a questioning, which is a further dependence on the charlatan for
And
answer.
being distraught as well. Like the emotional
Right, but
response.
You come back to the charlatan, right? That's the point.
Right, you're
bewilderment.
you're bewildered, you're confused, you need the solution, the charlatan offers solution, you exchange your, again, muscle mass proximity for that solution. Muscle mass proximity is literally the currency
You
that underlies everything.
you only have to work at McDonald's for 8 hours, and that's enough to afford his first course on the truth. Truth series version course section 1.
You're allowed to sleep in your car for one more day.
Yeah. So, do we have enough time even to tie up the axiological conspiracy?
Well, did we
We've got
state
about-
what the conspiracy is?
About an hour left. That's very
So-
generous.
So the conspiracy is qualified by the system expressing the model sound bites, but in an effort to extract muscle mass muscle mass proximal value out of the entire interaction. It doesn't give a shit about it beyond that.
How about just proximal value? 'Cause it's not all muscle unless you can consider brain a muscle. There's so many things that value can be extracted from.
Even when it comes to brain, it always comes back to some sort of action. The movement of a
Sure, that
the
kind of
movement of
weakens
the body.
the whole like muscle.
yeah. I'm not talking about strength. I'm not. I'm talking about the capacity to move muscle. Which, in the modern age, does not make a very huge distinction between, say, the physiological differences between men, women,
okay,
and children.
the way you're saying it, I feel like we have to say it's not muscle mass, it's like neuromuscular mass
Right, okay.
proximity. That's a generic. It's not like
The-
it's not like big bulky.
the thing that
dude
moves
is
body
the only
through
thing that's valued.
time in space.
Right, neuromuscular mass.
Through space in time, sorry.
Correct.
I can't believe I said that backwards.
Well, it probably makes sense.
They both do, in little ways. But yeah,
Hmm.
and again, like,
So we're also kind of recapping the plateaus of commodification. We must be,
inadvertently, yeah.
because through time things have built up in complexity in what's been commodified, and that's how we have a pseudo history of civilization, right?
So yeah,
Which lines up with to facts, factoids, and all this kind of stuff, but it's not. That's not the point. The point is the process.
So this focus on muscle mass specifically, like the muscle mass being the commodity that is required to be distributed, marketed,
Neuromuscular mass.
and everything, all of that. So all of that is the precursor as to why the world is not actually built towards the safety of children or women. It's built in an effort to extract as much product out of the neuromuscular mass
Right.
as possible
That
at the
it's-
expense
it's
of
basically-
anything else.
At the expense, it's considering the let's say women and children categories as the neuromuscular mass, even though it's completely feeble in many cases to
Right. What I'm saying by the expense is that whenever you have the weaker attribution.
Like children can work in a mine, but like a grown adult who's like has developed all the structure and bones to like pickaxe and shit, no comparison. But still,
which means
but the
that,
children isn't accounted for. It's just might as well be add to this pile.
which means that children are expendable, but the strong man who's already grown is not to the system.
Right?
Not as much.
So children carry the dynamite
Right.
very carefully, or you're not
Right.
coming home tonight.
And you get the added bonus in that in nature there are more children than there are adults. Simply because adults are the ones creating them. So you have this weird fucking situation is where like it happens. There's a work environment pressure too. Like for example, there's a shortage of junior able developers because companies don't hire them. They don't hire people who are inexperienced.
Right.
The problem is that you can't get senior developers without them going through being junior and intermediate.
Yeah.
So how the fuck are you going to be with senior developers in the future
There has
if
to
you
be
don't do
an
that?
in-house incubator, or however you would say it, corporate term.
Exactly. So this is the system admitting to itself without acknowledging
That
it
it's
to
destroying the
itself.
market, its own market, which it depends on, is being destroyed by itself.
Other way around. This is the system admitting to itself that it needs to cater to women and children in order to succeed at any layer future-wise.
Right,
Because it sets itself
because
as
it's
permanent.
just destroying its own market. That's what I meant.
But it doesn't actually pander to any of the actual model elements to it. It doesn't actually foresee the women and children as a viable quote-unquote specimen, if you will. So it does that in, what do you call it, a pandering way. So this is how you get like your diversity hiring. This is
Right.
how you get your, diversity hiring. There you go.
It's a term.
It's kinda
modern
like-
politics. People know.
Or diversity casting or whatever. Like
But that's. I don't think that's happening in
Tokenism.
very many
Tokenism.
places.
That's
but
what I'm referring
tokenism
to.
is the. It sounds like a good term. The token effects, like, oh look, on our vision, oh we're such a good company, like
Exactly.
on our advertising media and all this, like
we're
it's
so
all
diverse,
looks
but this
great.
is all pandering because do black people get more any advancement in their life? Do women get any advancement
Yes,
like benefits?
they do.
No, this black guy did. This woman did. Everything else is the same. It's that's why they're tokens.
Well,
that's what the
this
tokenism is.
It's a tough thing to like associate, like say, a black person as being like, oh, you must have diversity, DEI to get them into the company. That's insulting to a black person who of merit to the skill of the trade.
For sure.
Who is like, I belong here.
For sure.
Right.
But in a system that's catered to children, women, everybody else, you're already a child to begin with, so you get the most basic treatment, and everybody else.
Like, I'm trying to connect this with the problem of companies not having junior programmers who can raise up, right? Because they don't care about the unskilled so much. That's what has to be incubated. How do you do it? Do you force them, or what? Like these questions, right? That's a general problem for companies who just want to only hire that, like, you must have X number of years. What if you have 0 years? What do you do?
So yeah,
Many trades don't have.
It's a shunning problem because what's
anything.
happened is that you get shunned, you get pushed out. So that ability to gain the
Right.
skill is
And
not
then
there.
Right, and it's like a dog-eat-dog world, complete competition. Everyone kill each other till it's all dead. Meanwhile,
Only with your own
nobody
level. Only with
nobody
your own
can
level, though.
feed into even the system. Like the people, as they participate in these systems, often don't think about, well, where is the next generation coming from? It's like it's not a thought or a question, right? Like you just roll with the dynamics and let the company implode or explode after a certain amount of time. Like
we need this skill set, not that skill set. That skill set doesn't involve juniors. Okay, cool.
like right now, it seems like, oh no, senior people are going retired. We better train new people. Now forget about it. But now the seniors who have retired, well, it turns out they can't afford retirement because of inflation, all this shit. Well, they're coming right back, filling the gap. Companies are happy. Everybody's fucked. Like it's a total shit show.
I mean, there is that, but then there is also like, the seniors are out. They're not available anymore. All you can get is juniors. Nobody is there to train them. Like literally nobody's there to actually get them to the level of intermediates
Interesting,
or
yeah.
seniority.
Yeah.
So what do you
So
do?
in order to have that training, your company would have to be like a growing organism, which understands that it changes through time,
So
which they're not.
so take this
largely.
So take
which is
this as an
wild.
analogy for the grander scheme of things.
This
like,
is our civilization.
So we're neglecting the children, and sorry, I do keep putting women in this category, not because of any specific gender.
It's not a blame.
No.
Thing.
This will have to come back with. We
It's
have
more
children, women, and men in every single category, right? And then, so we're talking about from guest, participation, and member.
Right.
So it's not a gender-specific actual divide. It's a neuromuscular proximity divide.
Kind of feels like term
for exchanging action for currency.
Right.
So
as that's your agency in the market, right? That's where these categories, women, children, men, come from. Your agency in the market.
So from the market's perspective, to make it isomorphic, from the so the market is the thing that already has those divides, those ingrained divisions of identity. So from the market's perspective, the way to quote unquote make it isomorphic is to focus that market on children and on women first, like in that order, and then with that the isomorphism to like be ubiquitous for everybody is what is meant to be emergent out of that. So the idea isn't to cater to women as a physiological distinction, but the issues and the
Hold on.
Hold
on. According to the degrees of coherence, what if we like phrase this as catering to the guest first, then the participant, then the member? Like, I understand where you're going with that.
Yeah.
It lines up, but I think this is a generic way of saying, like,
It is,
cater to the most ignorant, then like those who are willing to participate, who like are in on it, like showing faith, and then those who truly understand, and then those who can teach. Like you go outwards to who you're catering to.
And none of that is gender divisible per se, or age divisible
I think
per se.
we could chop that right there.
The only reason I mention it the way I did is because
it's understandable.
The way the world is actually currently set up.
Anybody could.
It's basically meant for people with penises. Like literally, the assumption is that in order to function on this planet, you need a penis.
We need to disconnect that. It's the quality of your neuromuscular mass. That's what it caters to.
No, but
women have that. Certain children have that,
so
and can make a freaking fortune.
You have to have a penis, and then your muscular mass has to match the ideal.
I don't know.
Because if you have a woman who qualifies for the muscular mass part, she's still not going to get as far because of the penis problem. Like that's actually the current inner workings of the world. right? Like it's not an assumption.
Sure, you could say not get as far, but still can be
And for only that
multi-billionaire.
but for only that-
Multi-billionaire. What's even how much farther can you go? Whatever.
you still wouldn't be taken as seriously,
It's a hit on the market
no matter what the fuck you do.
in many cases. Yep.
So, fuck.
Who are you controlling money? Right.
Anyway. So it's not a gender division specifically, but it's a useful litmus.
And
It's an orienting tool.
do you agree that it should be related back to the degrees of coherence? So I said who to cater to, the guest, then the participant, then the member.
It is that, but the devotional explanation, like if you
Stories.
take it back out of
Look
the
at
academic,
history.
if you take it back out of the academic,
Right.
the academic viewpoint into the devotional one, the story, the myth has to line up with children, women,
Sure, yeah.
then men. Not to exclude men, but men will benefit
like I
from
said before,
all of those stages.
Women and children first. It's a classic
No,
trope.
women and children. The trope is great, but it's
reflective.
It's exclusive.
It's reflective of that.
No, it's exclusive. It's saying men are not considered. The point I'm actually driving at is that you take care of the children, you take care of the women, and by extension of both of those things, men are taken care of just as well. Like,
It sounds like you try to make a point and then contradict yourself. You don't have to care about the men, after all. Because if you care about the women and children, the men are cared after. And that's what we kind of brought this up initially.
It's not contradictory because the care for men is already imbued within the ideals of the first 2 points. And
right, as long as we don't get
the only reason to
carried
divide
away.
men and women apart from each other in the second and third stage is not to separate them as anything. It's just that the considerations that are given to women benefit men already. So if you take the considerations that benefit children, and if you take care of the considerations that benefit
I
women,
know. You're kind of
you
negating
are
the statement.
taking care of the
You're negating the
considerations
statement that
men
there are needs or demands above and beyond that set of women and children for men.
No, there isn't. That's what I'm saying. That men are not above women and children in any capacity.
But that there's
Once
any
you take care of
particular
those two things, you take care
men
of
are satisfied.
And that's, as far as claims go, that's the only one I'm going to make as a claim. As in, I have not provided scientific evidence for this.
It lines
However,
up.
I believe there's something beyond intuition in what I'm talking about.
So where you would come from, I think, like the angle from the men, what men would want is a good order, a good and true order. That's a demand which women, children at that point, as long as our demands are met, but there's something else that I think men would demand as
Towards what? What would be oriented
back
toward? Which is
towards-
already supplied from the bottom. So we have a completion of the loop.
There's got to be at least even an academic exercise to connect the two. I don't think it's just inherently there. But yes, who is going to be the one who satisfies the demand? Not like in a theoretical. The most neuromuscular massive pieces are going to be turning towards that.
Even methodologically speaking, the woman satisfies the very first demands that are necessary. Breastfeeding. The only supply that is necessary for life.
I posit that men, let's
So
say,
it-
have a
this-
demand which is distinct from women and children, and it has to do with order. I don't know how it works, but I think that's think
I don't think
that's
that's a distinct one
It's
from women in
not separate,
particular. I
but
think
in-
I think it's a demand of maturity, which both men and women
could
have
appreciate.
access to
Sure. Yep.
through aging.
Guaranteed. Yep.
So it's not a male-centric element. It's more like
It's not a child-centric thing.
it's like conservatism on the female side and your progressiveness is on the male side. It's like body and mind kind of a divide, in which your mind can trail off into the abstract, but it has to bring the
return from the hunt.
on the concrete.
Must. Yep.
And so
Agreed. I'm not implying. I don't want to imply that it's
Both
separate. That's a separate demand.
yeah,
But just that there is something higher that women, children, men, each, you can't just say, oh, women and children are satisfied, therefore men are satisfied. There's something extra, and it's that that range
in this situation, this is where men and women experience that
isomorphism.
that
right.
abstractness,
Of course.
and having
Of course.
to relate it back
Typically
to
not
their
children.
body.
Fine, but and men or women could appreciate that return of the mind back to the body,
Venturing out into the
and
world and
that,
bringing back
that,
sustenance.
that being an important thing is critical to the male or the man, I would say.
So there's a distinction being made between the male characteristic of venturing out into the world and the female characteristic of, say, sticking within the confines of the known, extracting something from the world and bringing it back into the world.
Mm-hmm.
So this is all mythology, of course.
Right.
So from the male perspective, that could be seen as going out, working, and supplying back to the wife or something like that. But from the female perspective, the same thing happens in that she brings out just phrase it clearly.
Okay.
So
It brings out a demand, almost an understanding of what is needed. The environment manifests the environment.
I'm trying not to confuse mythology with biology. So that's
if we hit
really,
those words, then we'll just bring it up.
It's
we
really
did.
really important not to confuse the two things, because the mythological element can be undertaken by either gender, whereas the biological piece sets out the tone of the story. So the tone of the story is, you have your root, your plant, your whatever, and something comes back to it and feeds it more information from the outside. So we have this sustenance
Change.
and hygiene situation going on. It has to expel, and it has to take in. It has to expel, has to take in. So the thing that expels and takes in is mythologically called female, simply because the mythology of it, of the human being is born, the woman is there with the eggs,
Conservatism.
the male comes out, comes back in, another child is born, and so on and so forth. So it continues with the female's eggs continuing the progeny, if you will. So there's a mythological element.
It's very kind of dry.
Yeah, it's the least
thinking.
Interesting element.
And that's how we're using term male, female,
Yeah.
or woman, man, or male, female in that mythological male, female.
So there's no female is purely chaotic or
Right.
male is purely ordered.
And nobody is completely contained by any one label or category
and also,
at any
and also
part of them,
the
their
journey
behavior.
of the journey of leaving the house and coming back in and whatnot pertains to everybody. It doesn't mean you have to have a penis, right? So it's like
Yep.
it's not. So with that, we're talking about like the body being the female, the mind being the male. All of these weird sort of connotations that allow us to say things like all sex is gay sex, all sex is straight sex. It like that's where that comes from because like you have a mind and you have a body and you have two bodies coming together. Well,
Right, right.
that's the
The
homo.
mythological male and female are typically like separated in a basic way. You could say like body and mind, and also chaos in the body and order in the mind. This kind of distinction, like through the archetypes.
And also the perception that the
primordial
body is the
archetypes.
ordered thing and the mind is what's chaotic.
Different perspectives.
Yeah. So that perspective is female. The other perspective
Right.
would be male.
So
in
the
mythology.
understanding in context could swap completely as to what's designated as what. Right. So
So-
mythologically, it's more it's dry,
So-
cut and dry, clean and swappable. I guess you could say.
So all sex is gay sex, body to body, mind to mind, right? But
That's gay.
very female to female, male to male. But all sex is heterosexual because body and mind, body and mind.
Right.
Right. So the things that were hetero before are now. I'm sorry, homo before are hetero now. If you go across versus vertical.
Yeah, because of course the mind is having sex with the body. No homo.
Something like that. Well,
Yes.
these are the weird places this mythology gets us into.
Too bad Based Brooks. Based Brooks never stuck
Understand-
around for,
yeah,
for the
to
discussion.
understand our ideas about gay sex. Hey, it happens to be also heterosexual. No matter how gay you are.
Yep.
Really? The only other alternative to sexuality, like if you're hetero, it's not homo. And if you're homo, it's not hetero. The alternative is asexuality.
Okay.
Think about it this way. Attraction to men, attraction to women. You can have a yes for men, a no for women. So you're asexual to women and sexual towards men. Switch that around. You can be sexual towards women, asexual towards men. You can be asexual towards both. You can be sexual towards both. And you can have anything in between.
Really?
So we're effectively are asexual to a degree.
I wasn't really paying attention, but that's
A
sounded
lot
pretty wild there.
So usually when
Like
people
asexual, like an earthworm, did it split in half?
no
and,
no
like,
those are hermaphrodites. They're attracted to exactly themselves.
Oh, like they make like a loop?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
they would stick in the center
Like they make a circle.
or
and
a
then,
dot.
And then babies come out?
They don't have to differentiate based on sex. They just have to be either sexual or not sexual. But they're forever in the middle. So, if you were to have a two-dimensional axis, if your sweet spot would be the
Getting laid
the 0 point of both x and y,
by yourself in a circle.
because there's no male, there's no female, there's only I am sexually attracted or I'm not sexually attracted. But then you can split that dot into two and go towards the male side, the female side, and then go up and down towards attraction or not attraction. So the more you're attracted to something, the more you're sexual towards it.
Okay.
So if you're very, 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 very straight, you're asexual towards men. You're sexual towards women.
I guess. Okay. Maybe I used the wrong term for earthworms. What is the word? Not
Asexual
asexual
is not having desire for
but what do they call
sexual interaction.
There's like, because earthworms, they don't need a
Hermaphrodites.
partner.
No, they're hermaphrodites. They
just have
do need a sexual partner, but
So
they don't have
they
a
find
difference
another worm. Okay.
They don't have a difference between male and female.
I wasn't paying attention back in elementary school.
Well, let me learn you.
It's like, holy shit, they just multiply somehow by themselves.
Yeah, so there's like a middle ground where everybody's the same. So basically, you have both eggs and sperm. The best way to think about it, I guess. And then you can have either a hypersexual attraction or hyposexual attraction, which means you would rather engage in sex or not engage in sex.
So just die.
I mean, John. Sorry.
But I mean, what species survive when they're averted in all ways to
Well,
just that
normally
interaction?
asexuality to that extent is extreme. That's not the common situation. That's the extreme. So you can have zero attraction to neither male nor female, at which point you're just like not sexually active at all.
And you die. The species, like, there's no species. That's kind of just a little cheap point.
Don't equate the individual with the species.
And if there is a variance, some
No,
worms.
this is a spectrum in which a species can land itself in.
So you're looking at worms in a pile. Say 20% of them
No,
don't give a shit about anything.
If you're looking at worms, you're only looking at the vertical axis of sexually active to not sexually active.
But you're saying, like, say,
So then there's a side axis
spectrum
for male
Forget
and
the
female.
side axis.
Forget
With the worms, you're saying, like, there's a spectrum of who wants to, like, procreate.
at all.
But why would there be any left who don't want to procreate?
It happens.
There's some, but it must be biased towards those who want to.
No, the asexuality is just a reality. There are certain individuals that are simply born that
But
don't
in the
want...
population, the majority are not like that.
No, it's an extreme.
That's
So
what
I started
that's
off.
what I mean, yeah.
So I started off with an extreme.
But it seems like a normal pull, kind of. It's not like in the middle, where...
I'm trying to relate the normal feeling of if you're a heterosexual, right? You're a male. You will have a strong gravitation towards sexuality towards in the female side, and zero towards the male side. So that zero, I'm trying to say, is the asexuality that everybody also experiences. So it's not just limited to said worms, but there is a spectrum of being sexual and not sexual towards different categories. So you can be, if you're 100% quote unquote heterosexual, which is an ideal, an extreme in itself, what you will see in this graph is that on the female side, the dot will be moved extreme to the extreme side, whichever is designated female.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the male side, you will go completely down to a zero of asexuality, zero interest.
Right.
You never encounter sexual thoughts encountering your own sex, for example.
It seems like to be sexual, even towards a male or female, would be one thing, and asexual would be like you just don't care whether
Right,
it's
it doesn't
one
come
or the
up.
other.
It doesn't come up. So it's not phobia. It's just lack of interest. And then you can start playing with the going negative, and it's like from zero to negative. It's like your phobia.
We are almost at the end of this sesh.
That's fine.
I must declare rides on the way, and I think we're gonna have a next part. Sad to say,
Yeah.
we'll have to plan it better. But the axiological conspiracy, the problem of meaning of value, is what can be looked at if you look at the world and say, wow, that's fucked up. How is it all so polarized and everything's completely wrecked? It started with this conspiracy to obfuscate the meaning of value, you could say. Conspiracy created through the ego, through its
Value
market.
and value. Meaning
Through its market.
and meaningless.
Right. Through the plateaus of commodification, a building system that it started with this thing at its very kernel, which is what we're trying to identify,
Drug
so we
fields.
can be.
So the thing.
That's the history.
The catalyst.
That's the
The catalyst.
chronology.
Yes.
That's our virtual
Do
chronology.
you know what a catalyst means?
Sure. Yeah, it makes a particular process happen faster.
Right.
Based on a particular
Right.
element being in present.
So we had all the ingredients for, say,
Right.
doing drugs.
So and even in
producing drugs,
Native
but
Americans, American society, when they would have myths for the white people plague of the mind, it was already inherent in their own soul. They knew about it.
Well, they were planters of corn, were they not?
It's exactly it's recognized for a reason.
No, corn,
Crop.
wheat, poppies, weed.
Right.
All of those mass-produced crops, countable, sortable, storable.
Right.
These are the criteria. The criteria: countable, storable, sortable. Currency.
Right.
It's hidden right in there.
This is what pisses me off. Doesn't piss me off, but about people who are like, oh, but why did the ancient Mayans and the Egyptians, why did they like gold so much? It's just simply rare. But no, it was a big conspiracy by the aliens to extract gold from our planet or something. They go off on all these things.
Okay,
Meanwhile,
Dustin.
you know what gold is?
Okay, Dustin.
Gold is money. No, people do that. Gold is money because it's fungible. You can take a piece of gold.
Metal
And
has that property.
Every piece of gold has an
Copper.
ability to be weighed, and its volume, and moved as a
Rocks,
good.
Copper, everything that can do that has been used for currency.
Like
and that's
seashells
telling.
is like amateur
It's
shit.
telling.
Copper is amateur. All these coins. Gold
And
is
as soon
like
as you have barter, you have an underlying thinking process that says this is worth this much, whatever.
yeah, gold, because gold never
And
tarnishes.
so I'll give you this much, whatever.
It's obviously
So
a
that
currency.
So that So that
The perfect
decision-
currency.
So your 2 rabbits for my 5 carrots isn't going for because 2 rabbits are worth 5 carrots. It's because 2 rabbits are worth whatever the fucking gold, and whatever the fucking gold is worth 5 carrots.
Yeah,
So there's an intermediate process going on in all barter fucking systems.
right. But for sure, it's way more carrots than rabbits.
It's more nuanced.
But yeah, just the fact of that gold has the properties of money.
Iron was more valuable than gold for
Money-
the longest fucking time.
Money
You know why?
is
Harder to obtain and can do way more shit.
harder. Yep.
Iron.
Through
Iron was cost.
through furnace smelting.
Aluminum costs more than gold at some points because it was in World War II airplanes.
Right.
So it
Yeah.
balances of
So those could have been good currencies, but they never maintained that value through time. That too, yep. And we're pretty much wrapping up here, but we'll have some final in a short moment. Hell yeah. We're back for final remarks, pretty much. And we'll be on our way out in, let's say, 10 minutes.
So go women.
I don't think we've
That's not the message, but
I don't think we've fully
articulated that. Yeah.
the axiological conspiracy. We're kind of getting into like remedies and this kind of ideas, structures for thinking about stuff, which is part of the point. But to me, one of the most important things is getting back to the root cause. Where did this all start? How, at least in a pseudo-historical way.
So pleasure, pain.
How can we look at it? How it started?
Pleasure, pain, and conceit.
This is the right. So the sabotage of value, the ability to understand value. What is the meaning of value? Which is a calculation we all do all the time. That calculation gets sabotaged.
So if conceit is the arbitrator of you versus other, so to speak, the axiological conspiracy here is that it will track things like pain and pleasure in relation to the self as positive or negative rewards, right? So the conspiracy is to hijack that system and to give value, quote unquote value, accounting value to the pleasure and pain experiences,
because
as formulated by
that's
conceit.
what we normally would do when we encounter an environment and we feel pain. We'll think, oh, that's bad, I should adjust how I'm doing things. Or we feel pleasure, oh, I must have been doing something right, I'll do that for next time.
Homeostasis, yeah.
Boom. That's the mechanism. This is what's hijacked. We no longer have understanding of the meaning of that, the value, how we value that. Protocol, how we value the protocol, the outcome,
the template,
whatever it is we're going after and getting pleasure or pain, that there's an ideal kind of thing.
The template we use has been alien.
The value we place on that.
The template we use for the formulation, you know, like if this is happening, you plug it into the template, you get this outcome. That's the alien
It's
part.
almost as simple as, is the pay good? Is the pay good? Okay.
And if your mythology is very lacking, that's the only calculation you'll need to make.
The pay is good. Done. I will do it. You will become, and we look at people out here walking up and down the sidewalk, they are moving for that purpose. The pay is good. Whatever. This is how people become disconnected from what's around them, their context, because what they value isn't based on anything that their senses could pick up. It's a number being piped through certain media, right? Your bank account has an amount in it.
It's positive
as long as you can keep checking that, you can see whether you did well or not.
Yeah, the amount of credits involved will tell them if you're a good or a bad person, because that's how you calculate.
And the idea of a conspiracy, I think we have to probably rest this one. In our model, we talk about the ego as the prime arbiter of the market. So the ego itself is conspiring with itself. Is there more than that?
Yeah, this is the point. There is no charlatan out there.
Right.
We are
like
our
some
own, we
collection
are our
of
own
agencies,
charlatans.
even or whatever.
Yeah. The whole message would be like that we are our own charlatans at the end.
The conspiracy is like the ego itself against itself, without knowing it. It's just a dysmorphic runaway condition of like how AI can optimize for paperclips.
Agency is what is masking the ubiquitousness of ego.
That we all have different positions.
Yeah, it's expressed differently.
Oh, I'm a manager.
Times.
That's a worker.
Yeah, but
that's a police officer.
But the mechanism is
right?
the same. It's ego. Yeah.
So I thought that's a good point to come to. That the conspiracy itself, the axiological conspiracy, isn't between people or groups or anything like that.
Which it amounts to that for sure. But it's inherent.
That's what emerges from it.
Yeah.
But if you want to look at the fundamental kernel, the seed,
It starts in the mind.
Of this, the mechanism, where it came from, it started earlier. And we all have.
It starts with the
We all
beliefs.
have that same seed. We can look at it.
And that seed is very simple to describe. It's the beliefs that you are working for. That's what has mythology
We
been
always
described
have
in?
myth.
But what has mythology been
Mythology
described
is your understanding of reality, your collection of stories.
It's the narrative you believe. That's what mythology is. It's the narrative that you
That's what I
take
meant, like,
to be as truth.
As an understanding, standing under in a legal sense to understand.
Oh, being understanding. Okay.
Yes. Hmm.
Which is interesting because it's like, if you have contracts out there, your understanding of those contracts.
It's a word.
So no, it's the same principle.
Right. No, that's what I mean. It's actually in law used technically, but in common parlance, it's like wishy-washy. No, understand means you stand under it. That is believed. That is your belief. Whatever is in question, that's a belief.
Capital U. Understand.
Right, sure.
Understand.
That's a tough one because we can understand a lot of things.
It's like responsibility, the ability to respond.
So, okay, capital U understanding is equivalent to belief, capital B. It's the same word.
The narrative that one believes, yeah.
Hmm. And that's why talking about myth and like, what do you believe, like, what's the point of it? It's very powerful.
It's
We think we've left the religious era, but no, there's new religions have come up. There's a set of beliefs, you share them with so many other people almost verbatim, and that's how you get on with, politics and all this kind of stuff in like lockstep with everyone else.
the institution is the new church, and the priest is the professional.
You mean capital or lowercase I institution? Because the institution in a model speak is the advocate of the individual in their demands to facilitate the advertisement of those demands.
An institution in the guild sense is like an aggregation of a particular demand. Food. The Institute for Food. The Guild of Food.
Mm-hmm.
And so on and so forth. Who partakes? Nobody knows. People who need it, people who want to.
Right, the food guild.
It's you step into it and step out of it as you need. Right, because if you remember the entire gift economy's version of what work looks like, it's like if you're bored and you want to do something, you go ahead and you take a look around at what are the demands, and you stick your head into one of them and fulfill it.
This idea, like, you don't have to do much work. People would look at that and say, that's impossible. Everything is scarce. But then we would have to say back, do you realize how much value is constantly extracted? Like the vast majority of all value extracted away from where it's produced and all that? Like there's nothing left.
That's what
you're trying to fight over what's left. Let's talk about like
all that extracted shit.
All that's left for you is punishment, and all the rewards in society, they went away. They're gone. Because that's how it's set up. So if you like that, okay, fine. It's not a big deal, fine. You like just how can you argue?
Just keep going, I guess.
Like it's great. Well, that's the awareness kind of thing, and like as we started the meeting, like with just the idea that people are having an awareness of different parts of the world getting the shit end of the stick. In the vast majority of ways, it's hard to look at it and say or do nothing, but many people don't encounter that through the media. There's no reminder. There's nothing. We're in bubbles, media bubbles, right? So how do we even know? But these are, fact is, people are encountering these narratives. They are seeing and understanding or trying to realize, how does the economy actually work? Well, it's a market economy. This is what it is. That's why we lay it out. So you can think logically about it if you want. It's been done before. We're just accumulating things together in a way that we can rely on it later, when it's like, well, this is kind of like a new version of church. I don't know. Like that seems that's a bad word, but the guild as we've described it.
The disparate pieces of information have one thing in common in that they lack meaning. So all of the disparate sentiments, they don't create a cohesive underlying thread of meaning. There's no underlying mythology behind it.
It's usually used as a shock and awe to get you to do something.
There are disparate pieces of
charlatanism.
different informations which don't connect to each other, which are by that definition
if each one of these exactly pieces of information were provided, and the model was provided as to why it's like this,
right,
and how the model explains why it's like this over there in that shit place, and why it's like this over here, and we feel pretty good at like some pockets here and there.
An overarching,
it's all the same
delineation.
Right, it's not given. There's no model given.
What the fuck the terminology is actually supposed to be even saying. So what's expressed as success by the system, for example, is an absolute atrocious failure for the model. Especially when we're talking about like things like child labor.
Right. All the things laundered, all the meaning obfuscated away from our dollars being put to support this thing.
Abuse, women abuse, children abuse.
Just statistically the most likely to be.
The abuse of the poor, the abuse of the non-white. Any one of those different things, they're all flowing into the.
I agree that a lot of things add up, but everybody can be homeless. Doesn't matter what race, what sex, gender.
That wasn't the point, actually. And in fact, there are some people that are more likely to be homeless than others. That's kind of glossing over that.
Especially if you look at where they were born. What is the infrastructure like? What's the community like there? Is it a street life? Like you're born into that. You're gonna be like that.
But then there's the whole certain people need to be born.
Gonna tend towards that.
There's also the movements of like certain people have to be born there because we don't want them born over here. So like the very segregation of just don't allow those people in. It's shunning in different capacities. Just the entire exclusive mindset.
Definitely what's easily visible to the eye as a difference in people will be used when push comes to shove in the worst case situations, like how to
and not even in the worst.
How to create groups, not even in the worst, but yes, when it comes down to it, look at prisons. How do they organize? Right? Just look at prisons.
Or society, which organizes exactly the same way.
Society is a prison.
Like, why are certain colors shoved into certain places? This is not okay. This is not how nature behaves.
Right.
Like, by not okay, I mean, like, you don't see that in nature. You don't see a systemic discontinuation of resources based on random segmentation like that. I don't even know what to call this.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Well, it's really bad when nobody has any idea how to support themselves. So how do you have a community if you can't work together as a community? Whatever you've got, right, to lift yourself up.
mm-hmm.
It's no, you don't need a lending hand from outside. Just what's your culture like? How does it work? We are all people, and our culture should all reflect probably very similarly.
That's a tough one because if culture,
Aside from historical
if the culture is full of
artifacts.
disease, then the culture is not even the helper.
Of course, right. That's maybe one of the main arguments is that certain mindsets or cultures aren't helping at all, and in fact are in a runaway condition to just
I actually
constantly
think it's
shit on everything that could help.
disingenuous to talk about cultures in the civilized world because the
As
civilization
if they exist separate
actually
from? Yeah,
merges
everything is
everything
it's twisted,
together.
completely twisted. There's
So-
no even chance for a culture left.
So the only reason for using
Right.
the nomenclature of culture
Yeah.
is to segregate.
This is like the idea of everybody just pick yourself up by your bootstraps, right?
They're only in that situation is because of their culture. That's
So-
what it becomes.
Yeah, again, we must, I feel like, appeal to upper middle class of all races, all color, all culture, everything.
Said so whitely.
The other upper middle class of all to go into your
Can you
community.
be more white? Can you be a little
Oh,
more white?
sorry, there's no black upper middle class.
No, it's just funny.
Sorry, I assumed there was.
It's just funny as fuck.
Right? You're gonna have people who are better off in that neighborhood, any neighborhood.
It's so nuanced
But
that there is no way
The
to say
idea
it right.
of an upper middle class is so crushed. This middle class is gone, like the way the economics have been going. Nobody can afford to spare anything, so it's like upper. That's the way you have to insert the word upper, and it's like holy fuck, we have to rely on. It wasn't just like average Joe, but now it's like freaking the mini elite
Look,
are the ones who
I'll
are
put it
going
to
to
you
save
this way.
things.
There is no participation within the system that isn't laced with racism. It just or sexism or whatever ism you want to fucking call it.
But
All
isn't
all of those engagements will be political, racial, sexual in nature because the language that is
Okay.
being utilized and running around
I see what you're saying.
attributes all
I see what you're saying
words-
about most
all words
most organizations.
to these things.
Most
It's
organizations.
impossible to like literally have a thought that you can express it that isn't going to be painted at least somehow by the hearer this way or that way or the other. So it doesn't matter, for example, how much we are pro women or birth or life or abortion or I'm using
Pro children.
I'm talking about dichotomous topics on purpose. We're pro
Sure.
basically everything, as long as it's the correct thing for the person.
Pro context.
Yeah, pro context. That's
pro
what,
context.
That's what we're for. It won't matter because as soon as you utter one soundbite, it's that side. You say the other soundbite. It's.
I get it. Okay,
So-
you're pointing at a tall order, and I would still sit here saying like, okay, well this is a renewal of the idea of church, of community, right, of
And
organization
that's a tall order.
over the gift economy,
And that's
organization over the gift economy.
But that's still a tall order, and
course.
by its very
Mhm.
nature of what it is.
Right, and that's never been done. We had, like, in, let's say, pre-civ past, organization around the gift economy. But it wasn't through, like, this kind of... We've already passed through thresholds of, like, commodification. So these gifts have to be, like, regimented So through the
Well,
trade guild membrane.
That's the whole key to the plateau. The plateau causes a delay in response to the activity. So it takes the activity that is available for it for granted to do whatever the fuck else it can in the meantime, and disconnect the response of nature from that situation.
I
So-
get an
so
intuition the
in some
gift
sense-
economy should be more powerful than it ever was, potentially.
The power of the gift economy laid in the fact that if you didn't participate in it, it would kill you. Right?
Sure,
We
like
didn't
as,
have the technology.
you're talking about like integral reward of like I hunt, get a meat, that's a reward.
Right.
Like great, sweet, immediate, and I share it with people and everybody sharing.
And if you don't, it rots.
But
There's
also
no
if,
fridge.
if you're sick or whatever, like someone else is gonna get meat,
Yeah.
so it doesn't destroy itself immediately.
No, it's very resilient.
What was
But
the point again?
the point is that in that situation you go against it, it works very negatively towards you. However, to behave against it within the system delays that repercussion. So you can fuck the environment for a while before any of that retribution comes back to you. There's a delay between the action and the consequence. That delay.
I feel like that's a big point.
That delay
If
introduces
it wasn't there, you couldn't do arbitrary things.
right, and that delay is what introduces the capacity for both reward and punishment. Notice the difference between those two situations. In the first situation, basically your reward is the lack of punishment, whereas in the systemic situation it's the opposite. Your only reward is
By the way, sorry, we're leaving in like 1 minute. Recap and final thoughts.
So in the gift economy, all activity is rewarding. Your only punishment is the lack of
Typically,
reward.
immediately. Yep. You want to bring up the point of delayed consequences for anything potentially.
That reverses the situation in saying that
Lets you
the only
do
reward
the
is
bad
lack
thing,
of punishment.
the bad immediate thing, but then somehow not pay for it till later, which at that point through contract could be a reward instead of a punishment.
So in this case, like, do whatever, forget about the punishment or the reward.
Right.
And eventually you'll get one or the other.
We don't. None of us have to hold an immediate and total model of society in our heads, of
And therefore-
what's happening, like operations management of the culture of the tribe,
What does that
to understand how the flows of commodity and everything.
And what does that do to accountability?
It's gone. You can do whatever you want. In
Because it's
theory.
delayed.
In theory, right? Yeah.
It's a future concern. It's not an immediate one.
And on top of that, you save the energy of learning how all this shit works. Right? This gets into like specialization and all that, and which it's hard to argue against. And all, you know what I mean? Like we can't all know every facet of society to do it perfectly. So there is it's kind of like balances, and the plateaus of commodification, they can't be reversed. We've come up and discovered these conveniences of how to work together, and through currency and all that. That can't go away.
Well,
we can't go backwards.
So one example for plateau of commodification, the transformation of the environment into land. How do you go back from that?
Well, you'd have to designate a special
Land
area, which is designated
Land.
to be
Land.
land.
See, you can't dip back.
Uh,
Because that becomes land. Somebody owns it.
But there was always a proto-ownership of like ranges where people knew how to hunt things and like they would defend themselves as they moved through it. And if you encountered them, that's, you know, they're in this space. There's
Another point. Have we ever gone back from transformation of the environment into land, or has it only progressed?
There must be like moon. Some pockets.
Even
like
of the moon, we're already putting fucking flags on the
Easter
moon.
Island. Overrun the ability of the land to support the people.
It's the land that cannot be touched.
They
but
put
it's
up
still
some
land.
monuments of these giant heads or giant people on the rocks, and the island could support. Boom! Now it's gone. Now it's land.
Is there anything that is not land anymore on the planet? It doesn't go away. It just grows. Once it starts, maybe some areas weren't claimed yet.
I think I know what you're saying, and
going
I agree.
There's no environment. There's only land. I
agree.
It's traded.
Even my thinking about Easter Island, like maybe I could own it. Just even that thought that's in the noosphere of like this thought of ownership of that island, because I know the coordinates, I know where it is. It's commodified in a sense as
an object
certain
for sale.
Like GPS location.
Yeah, reduced to numbers.
Right? It is, and a lot of people think of it that way. So therefore, what do? Like, how do you reverse that? You don't.
No, you go through the process.
Way of thinking. Exactly. So to the point, I think,
and
is
the process fundamental.
We don't advocate going backwards into a way of thinking that was before, just because we're pointing towards gift economy and all this kind of stuff. We acknowledge fully that we must carry forward what's been developed in these plateaus, because you don't go backwards from a plateau. You reincorporate things strategically and all that. And we got a GTFO. So last words. I think this was good, but I think there will be a part 5. So lads and gents, we'll see you